The room was dark. Too dark. A thin strip of light leaked through the cracks in the old wooden shutters, catching dust drifting lazily in the air. On the cold stone floor, a boy stirred. His lashes twitched, then a pair of pale blue eyes slowly opened. Where am I? The thought hit him like a shock. Michael Willson pushed himself up, one hand going to his temple. His body ached everywhere, his breath visible in the chill. Something was off. Completely off. This wasn't his apartment. No cluttered desk stacked with empty cans and noodle cups. No PC tower humming with a soft blue glow. No squeaky chair with coffee stains on it. Instead, a single wooden table stood in the middle of the room. It was buried under open books and yellowed scrolls. The air smelled of parchment and old wax, like a scholar's study frozen in time. Michael's heartbeat picked up. He staggered to his feet, legs unsteady, and moved toward the table. That was when he saw it. An envelope lay on top of the books. Dark red wax sealed it, stamped with the image of a dragon coiled around a sword. It felt heavy just looking at it. Final. His fingers trembled as he picked it up, broke the seal, and unfolded the crisp paper inside. A bronze token slipped out and hit the wood with a light clink. The number carved into it was clear and sharp, 754. Michael's gaze dropped to the letter. He started reading. The more he read, the drier his mouth became. The letter. Date. February 2nd, 3892. To Mr. Michael Willson. It is with great honor that we inform you of your selection to participate in the 367th year entrance examination of Arcade Hunter Academy, the foremost institution for cultivating elite hunters across the world. Your entrance examination has been scheduled for March 15th, 3892. Your token number is 754. This token is unique to you and will serve as your sole identification during the examination process. Without this token, entry into the examination grounds will not be permitted. The entrance examination will assess candidates through 4 trials designed to measure your worthiness to join the hunter ranks. Endurance trial, a physical test of stamina, resilience, and survival. Intelligence trial, written exam, an assessment of your strategy, tactics, and decision-making. Skill test, combat exam, a demonstration of your combat aptitude with your chosen weapon or technique. Special exam, hidden, a classified trial, revealed only to those who progress. Candidates are required to arrive at the Arcade Hunter Academy examination grounds no later than 9 a.m. on the examination date. Late arrivals will be disqualified without exception. We extend our best wishes for your success and look forward to witnessing your potential. Signed, Harold Crimson, Principal, Arcade Hunter Academy. Bearer of the Order Seal, Council Elder. Michael's hands shook as he lowered the letter. No, this can't be real. His voice cracked. He pressed his hands against his chest, his arms, his face, as if trying to peel the illusion away. But the letter stayed. The token still gleamed on the table. He swallowed, eyes fixed on the name written there. Arcade Hunter Academy. The words punched the air out of his lungs. That name, that academy, it was too familiar, too impossible. This is the game's tutorial. His knees almost gave out. The game. The Eclipse of Hero, the World's End. The game he'd played for years. The one where the protagonist, Leon Lionheart, started his journey. The game where the world was destined to be destroyed. His past life. Memories slammed into him like a wave. Samar, that was his real name. 34 years old. Corporate drone by day, content creator by night. And a gamer. Not just any gamer. The gamer. For 8 years, the Eclipse of Hero was his life. Rank number 1 on the global leaderboards. Unbeaten PvP champion. Raid leader people whispered about in guild chats like a myth. Players paid real money just to have him carry them through content. His in-game name was worth more than his actual salary. The golden age of MMOs. Laggy internet. Chunky monitors. Begging his parents not to touch the phone line during Demon Castle raids. For Samar, that was paradise. Until now. Now he was inside it. Michael's lips trembled. If this really is the world of Eclipse of Hero, he clenched his fists. Then this planet is doomed. Because he remembered the story. Leon Lionheart would grow stronger, defeat the demon god, only for the demon god to self-destruct and obliterate the entire world. Humanity and the other races, all erased. That was the ending. That was fate. But fate had already shifted. Michael's, no, Samar's, eyes sharpened. If I'm here, then I'm not letting it end the same way. More memories flowed in, not from Samar, but from someone else. They smelled of iron and leather, of forged smoke and worn steel. Michael Willson. That was who he was now. Second son of Darius Willson, a B-class hunter who once tore through dungeons with a steel sword and a pride sharper than his blade. His father's gruff voice echoed in his mind. A sword isn't for glory, Michael. It's for survival. For family. Then came his mother's face. Lily Benrick, a mage of twin elements, fire and frost. Pale gold hair pulled back in a loose braid, laughter warm enough to soften winter. Yet when she fought, her eyes turned cold as ice. She was the kind of woman who could burn an ogre to ash and freeze a wyvern's wings in the same breath. Their guild, the Willson Adventuring Guild, wasn't famous. It wasn't noble. It wasn't rich. Officially, it sat around rank number 7652 on the Global Hunter Registry. One small guild among tens of thousands. But it endured. 5 B-class hunters, 63 C-class, 45 D-class. A stubborn little family bound together by grit, not glory. They cleared E and C-rank dungeons. They hunted beasts that threatened trade routes. They sold mana stones to stay afloat. It was enough to keep the guild hall lit. Enough to fill plates. Enough to let the kids dream. Michael grew up in that dream. He remembered the worn wooden floors of the hall, polished by boots rather than care. He remembered the faded banners, patched instead of replaced, because his father said, "A scar means you survived. That's worth more than fresh paint." He remembered training in the courtyard, his father correcting his grip over and over until his palms split and bled. The boy Michael Willson was not special. He didn't awaken some legendary trait at 10. His sword talent didn't shock anyone. He wasn't Leon Lionheart, the chosen hero destined to change the world. He was just ordinary, a swordsman in training with a minor ice affinity. Useful, but limited. His guild pinned hope on him. His parents pinned hope on him. And Michael quietly carried that weight. He wanted to rise. For them. But the reality of the Willson Guild was harsh. Hunters got old. Wounds accumulated. Meanwhile, noble-backed guilds and wealthy factions looked down on them as leftovers from a past age, waiting to disappear. That was why the Arcade Hunter Academy entrance exam had meant everything. The academy wasn't just a school. It was a forge. Graduates became elite hunters, faction leaders, royal guards, even kingslayers. To get in was to step beyond mediocrity. Michael Willson, the ordinary son of a fading guild, had dared to apply. He remembered leaving for Atlan City, his father's heavy palm on his shoulder, fingers calloused, grip firm. "You carry the Willson name. Don't disgrace it." He remembered his mother's hug, quick but tight. "Come back stronger, Michael. Strong enough that no one dares look down on us again." Those words cut deep. They were love. They were also a burden. So he worked. By day, he delivered coffee in a crowded cafe, bowing to hunters and officials who barely noticed him. By night, he trained alone in the park, his sword cutting through cold air until his arms shook and his lungs burned. His body wasn't gifted, but his will refused to bend. For Michael, the academy wasn't just a chance. It was the lifeline for him, for his family, for a guild the world had already written off. The memories finally settled. Michael looked down at his hand. The faint scars, the calluses along the fingers and palm. This wasn't Samar's keyboard soft hand. This was Michael's. Young, worn, and real. "So this is me now," he whispered. 15 years old. White hair. Blue eyes. Ordinary talent. Crushed by expectations, but still burning inside. Not the protagonist. Not chosen. An extra. But extras could change stories too. His brows drew together as another memory surfaced. The cheapened room in Atlan City. The days serving drinks at the cafe. The nights training under flickering street lamps. His determination to pass the entrance exam. not for himself, but to raise his guild's name. The letter that had come, the potion that came with it. It had promised power, one drink to increase his rank. He had drunk it, and then pain. His throat burned like fire. His vision blurred. His lungs seized as if someone had ripped the air from the world. Then darkness. Michael's hand shook. His breathing turned rough. That wasn't a blessing. It was a setup. Poison. Someone had used his desperation to get rid of him. And now he was here, in this body, standing where Michael had fallen, while whoever did it walked free. Who was it? His voice dropped, cold and sharp. Who killed me? Then it happened. A sound that didn't belong to this room at all. Ding. Lines of blue light flickered into existence in front of his eyes. Congratulations, host, for regaining your lost memory. System activation complete. Syncing host status with world framework. Sync complete. Michael stared at the glowing text hanging in the air. Slowly, his lips curled into a grin. Congratulations, host, for regaining your lost memory. System has been activated. Syncing with world framework. Sync complete. The words floated in the air like a hologram, glowing faint blue, as if someone had pasted a game HUD over reality. My jaw actually dropped a little. You got to be kidding me. For a second, I honestly thought this was just my brain glitching. A leftover dream. A stress hallucination. But the text was too sharp, too solid. Each line felt there, like you could reach out and scrape it off the air. Then, just like a menu popping up in an RPG, another prompt slid into view. Starter gift pack detected. Open now. Yes/no. I let out a short laugh, half nervous, half thrilled. Gift pack, huh? Every gotcha-addicted neuron in my brain lit up at once. I'd opened more loot boxes in the eclipse of hero than I'd like to admit. This felt exactly like that moment right before you click open and pray you don't get trash. My fingers even twitched like I was reaching for a mouse. I couldn't help grinning. Yeah, okay. Yes. Obviously yes, mother. Ding. The system didn't even wait for me to finish. Opening starter gift pack. Ribbons of light spiraled outward, curling through the room like glowing streamers. For a moment, my shabby little room felt less like a cheap rental and more like the center of the universe. Rewards obtained. +5 free stat points. 1x affinity selection card. 1x skill selection card. The items didn't just appear in my inventory. 2 cards manifested in front of me, hanging in the air and turning slowly, each one giving off a soft, magical glow. Instinctively, I reached for them before catching myself. Right? Mental commands. Not VR. I let out a low whistle. Okay, yeah. This is broken. Tutorial freebies are busted as always. Affinity choice. Use affinity selection card. I only had to think it. The system reacted at once. Select one affinity. Fire. Water. Dark. Space. I blinked. Then I started laughing. Wow, you're just handing this to me. My natural affinity in this body was ice. Not bad at all. Great for control, defense, battlefield control. But space? Space was pure PvP horror. I remembered tournaments, ranked ladders, late nights. Back when I was Samar, 34, #1 on the leaderboards and professional nightmare to anyone who queued into me. Screams and voice chat still echoed in my memory. Where did he go? He teleported again. This is broken. Ban this build. Space wasn't just rare. In the right hands, it was unfair. Positioning, blinking, bending distance. Fight someone who really knew space, and it felt like playing against a cheat engine. My brain didn't even pretend to hesitate. Space. Lock that in. Ding. Host has acquired space element affinity. The moment the notification appeared, my body jolted. A sharp shiver ran through me, like cold electricity licking along my nerves. For half a second, it felt like the room tipped sideways and my feet weren't on solid ground anymore. Then it snapped back. Okay, yeah, that's something. I braced a hand on the table, waiting for the vertigo to pass. That's a serious rush. Skill choice. Next up, the skill selection card. Use skill selection card. Another menu unfolded in the air. A small list of options, each name glowing faintly. 6 total. 2 green rank skills. 2 blue. And then, a purple glow. Shadow swap, purple rank. I didn't need to see the rest. Well, hello there, I murmured. Shadow swap. My old main. The heart of my PvP build. Mark a shadow within range. Switch places instantly. No charge up. No flashy warning. Just gone here, now I'm there. I remembered a finals match. Narrow dungeon hallway. 2 opponents boxing me in. They thought they had me pinned. I tagged a torch's shadow behind them. Swap. They died before they even turned around. The chat had exploded. What has happened? He's cheating. He has to be cheating. Space plus shadow swap equals ban this man. I smirked at the memory. Guess we're back to being unfair. Ding. Skill acquired. Shadow swap, purple rank. Status window. Then the system laid out the big one, my status. Status. Name, Michael Willson. Age, 15. Class, magic swordsman. Trait, mana manipulation, precise control, and optimization of internal mana flow. Rank F. Affinity, ice, space. STR, 35. STA, 24. AGI, 26. YNC, 75. INT, 43. Mana, 577/680. Skills, sword swift, green. Shadow swap, purple. Arts, basic swordsmanship, novice, 87%. I stared. For a long moment, all I could do was breathe and look. Then I let out a slow, disbelieving whistle. You gotta be kidding me. This is nuts. For some nobody extra, these stats were ridiculous. I'd seen protagonists in games and novels start worse than this. I leaned back on the creaky bed, grin tugging at my lips. Not bad, Michael. Not bad at all. The tightness in my chest, that quiet, suffocating fear since I woke up here, loosened a little. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't just a side character tossed into a doomed world. I had a system. I had space affinity. I had shadow swap. And more importantly, I had a second chance. My fist tightened. All right then. If this world thinks I'm just a background character, let's prove it wrong. The blue glow of the system flickered, almost like a nod. For the first time since waking up, I felt like I wasn't just being dragged along. I was actually in control. GRR. My stomach growled so loud it startled me. The system window flickered like it was laughing at me. I rubbed my neck. Right. Stats and skills don't fix being broke and hungry. Can't exactly eat space magic. Hunger hit me all at once. That was enough to get me moving. I slid off the bed, joints protesting, and crossed the room. The floorboards complained under every step. Click. The latch lifted. I pulled the door open and a cool draft swept in. The hallway outside smelled faintly of smoke and old wood. The stairs groaned under my weight as I went down, one hand trailing along the worn railing. Thump, thump, thump. At the bottom, I pushed through the swinging door into the common room. Heat hit me first, the solid wave of warmth from the big hearth. Then the noise. Tankards clinking, people shouting, laughter, the scrape of chairs and boots. Oil lamps flickered above long tables where mercenaries in mismatched armor argued over something loud and stupid. From the kitchen, meat sizzled on iron. The air was thick with smoke, sweat, and roasted spices. My stomach practically screamed. I couldn't help it. I grinned. This is literally an MMO tavern hub. Behind the counter stood the innkeeper, a broad man with gray in his hair and arms like he'd been arm wrestling barrels his whole life. His apron was stained, his expression easy. Michael boy, he boomed, waving. You've been hiding upstairs all day. Training again? I froze for a heartbeat, then nodded, sliding onto a bar stool. Yeah, something like that. Got anything to eat? He chuckled. Hungry, are you? Hunters can't swing a sword on an empty belly. The kitchen door swung, and his wife stepped out, short, round, cheerful, dusted in flour like she'd walked through a snowstorm. She carried a tray stacked with fresh bread, steam still rising. Grilled boar from this afternoon's hunt, she said with a warm smile. Fresh bread. We've stew too if you like. My eyes lit up. Meat, bread, and if you have it, orange juice. She laughed. Orange juice? Listen to this one. You must be for money. Not rich, I said, grinning. Just picky. She rolled her eyes and shuffled away, muttering something about city kids. When the food arrived, I nearly cried. Thick slices of grilled boar glistening with honey and pepper. A loaf of bread that crackled when I tore it open, piping hot steam curling out. A glass of orange juice, slightly sour, slightly sweet. I took a bite of the boar. Stopped. Oh, oh wow. The flavor crashed into me. Smoky, sweet, sharp with spice. My taste buds went to heaven. This is dangerous, I mumbled around mouthful. I might stay at this inn just for the food. The innkeeper chuckled, polishing a tankard. Long as you pay, I don't mind. Speaking of it, I dug into my pouch and handed over a few coins. Clink, clink. There went 140 ren. That left me with 657 run. Not rich, not poor. And with the system's exchange rate of 1 SP equals 10 run, I basically had a backup source of cash as long as I was willing to grind. Tavern chatter. After eating, I stayed where I was, leaning back on the stool and soaking in the warmth. For a moment, I could almost forget I wasn't in my old apartment. Almost. At the table behind me, a group of hunters were swapping stories. I'm telling you, the last kobold had fangs like daggers. You liar, kobolds don't even. Shut it, I've got the scars. Further away, someone talked about escort work. Two others argued over dungeon paths. Most of it washed over me as background noise. Until, more of those weird deaths, someone said quietly. My ears sharpened immediately. Applicants, another voice replied. Kids here for the academy exam. Found dead in their rooms. No wounds. No blood. Just dead. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. My hand tightened around my mug. So it wasn't just me. Someone was targeting exam candidates. Not random. Not coincidence. A plan. I forced myself to breathe and let the chatter fade again. It just confirmed what I already suspected. I'd have to be careful. Very careful. Back in the room. By the time I made it back upstairs, the inn had quieted. The hall creaked softly under my steps. Lamplight flickered against the old walls. The door shut with a muted click behind me. I collapsed onto the bed for a moment, then sat back up and summoned my status. The window hovered there, calm and blue. Ding. New quest generated. Day 1 training regimen. Sword swings, 0/1000. Run, 0/5 kilometers. Push-ups, 0/200. Reward, +1 free stat point, +2 STA, +100 SP. I snorted. Daily grind, huh? Just like old times. I stretched my arms over my head, joints cracking. For once, the thought of grinding didn't feel like a chore. It felt comfortable. Tomorrow, I muttered, letting myself fall backward. We start farming. The system window dimmed, hovering like a soft night light in the dark. The next morning, birdsong dragged me out of sleep. Pale sunlight slipped through the curtains, dust drifting lazily. My body felt like it had slept on rocks, but the system prompt above me was impossible to ignore. Quest progress, day 1 training regimen, 0%. Okay, I groaned, rolling off the bed. I grabbed my sword as it rattled against the wall. Let's suffer. The small park behind the inn became my training ground. Grass damp with morning dew, air cold enough to bite. I planted my feet, exhaled, and swung. Whoosh. Again. Whoosh. At first it was easy. The blade cut the air cleanly. One swing. 10, 20, 100. The system's counter ticked upward. By 200, my shoulders burned. By 300, sweat was dripping into my eyes. Sword swings. 312/1000. Come on, I muttered through gritted teeth. You've done worse. Remember 12-hour ray grinds? This is nothing. Next were push-ups. Palms pressed into cold ground. Lower body. Push up. Repeat. By 70, my arms shook like they were made of jelly. Push-ups. 71/200. Then the run. Cobblestone roads blurred under my feet. I weaved past carts, dogs, and half-awake merchants opening shop. Hunters gave me weird looks, but I didn't slow down. Thump, thump, thump. By the time I staggered back into the park, lungs burning, my vision was swimming. Run. 5/5 kilometer complete. I dropped onto the grass, spread-eagled, panting like I climbed a mountain. And still I was smiling. This is the good kind of pain. Then smelled even better coming back. Warm bread, stew, roasted meat. Pure motivation. The innkeeper's wife, Marta, spotted me and nearly dropped a bowl. Again, she asked. You'll collapse at this rate. I slumped onto a stool. Gotta be ready by March. I managed. Entrance exams not going to pass itself. She laughed and shoved a bowl of stew into my hands. Eat. At least die, full if you must. Her husband, Roderick, came over with 2 mugs of cider and set one in front of me. On the house, he said. Even if you don't make it, being able to say someone from our end took the exam is worth something. I raised an eyebrow. Inspiring. He studied me for a moment. You don't look like the usual starry-eyed kids chasing glory. You look sharper. I shrugged, keeping my voice light. Guess we'll see on exam day. Marta swatted Roderick's arm. Stop spooking him. He needs sleep, not paranoia. Then her tone softened. Just be careful, Michael. The city's strange lately. Young exam candidates found dead in their rooms. No marks, nothing. It's unsettling. I forced myself to swallow, to look calm, even as her words twisted in my gut. So it's spreading already. That night, after the noise downstairs died and Ian fell into that deep, creaking silence, I sat cross-legged with my sword resting across my lap. I closed my eyes and focused inward. Mana hummed quietly inside me, cool and steady. I guided it down my arm into the blade. FSSSH. Frost bloomed along the steel, a thin layer of shimmering ice. For a heartbeat, it held, shining in the lamplight. Then, crack! The ice fractured and fell away in tiny shards that melted as they hit the floor. Skill progress. Frost edge plus 4%. I let out a breath. For seconds. Better than last time. Each attempt left me more drained, but also more energized in a weird way. Watching the numbers climb, even a little, was addicting. When I finished, I sheathed the sword and leaned back, closing my eyes. That was when I felt it. Not ice. Something else. I reached for it. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Gravity loosened its grip. For a blink, it felt like my body was in 2 places at once. My stomach lurched, like I'd taken a step off a cliff and never hit the ground. GH. I snapped my eyes open, heart pounding. Yeah, no, that's enough of space for tonight. I muttered, wiping cold sweat from my forehead. Last thing I need is to teleport into a wall or something. Still, beneath the nerves, excitement sparked. Space affinity. Mine. I stood to blow out the lamp and froze. There was movement near the window. A shadow, just at the edge of the lamplight, right where it shouldn't be. I blinked. It was gone. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. My hand drifted back to my sword. Guess I'm not sleeping early after all. I murmured. The system's faint blue glow hovered above me, calm and unbothered. Somewhere out there, someone had poisoned Michael Willson. Someone had already tried to erase him once. And from the way things were moving, they weren't done yet.
Hey everyone, welcome to our channel, and thank you for your support. If there's a favorite novel on the channel and you want the next part, you're just one step away. Become a Patreon member and I can make it depending on your tier. Thank you for your attention.
I slept lightly that night. Every creak of the old wooden inn seemed sharper in the dark. Every footstep in the hallway dragging my eyes open. The system's faint hum was a comfort. As soon as dawn bled into the sky, the blue screen reappeared. Day 2 quest activated. Sword swings, 0/1000. Run, 0/5 kilometers. Push-ups, 0/200. Rewards, +1 free stat, +2 STA, +100 SP. I dressed, strapped my sword to my hip, and stepped into the cold morning. The parched frost-slick grass crunched beneath my boots. I started with push-ups this time, hoping to get them out of the way before my arms turned to lead. My breath puffed, white in the air. By the time I hit 200, my shoulders felt like they'd been hammered flat. Sword swings were next. With each motion, I pictured the enemies I'd faced in the game: demon warriors, dungeon beasts, rival hunters. The repetition was mind-numbing, but muscle memory was forming, each swing faster and cleaner than the last. At the halfway point, I sheathed the sword and ran the 5 kilometers, weaving through the city streets. The market was already waking hawkers calling out fresh bread, butchers hanging cuts of meat, children darting between stalls. Every so often, I caught sight of someone watching me, their eyes lingering too long before they vanished into the crowd. By noon, I was back at the inn, sweat-soaked and sore. The common room smelled of roasted duck and potatoes. Marta spotted me and waved me over. "You'll waste away if you keep skipping breakfast," she scolded, sliding a plate in front of me before I could protest. The duck skin was crisp, the meat tender, the potatoes golden with butter. "Careful," I said between bites. "I might stay here until the exam, just for the food. You pay on time? I'll fatten you up for free," she said with a wink. Roderick joined us, a mug in his hand. "Word in the market says the Academy's testing this year will be harder than ever. New head examiner. Mean as an orc with toothache." "Sounds fun," I said dryly. "Fun for the crowd," he corrected. "The candidates? Not so much." He leaned in. "If you're serious about this, you'd better be training more than your sword arm." I nodded, storing that away. Physical, magical, and mental readiness. That was how the Academy weeded out the weak. The rest of the afternoon was spent on magic drills. Frost Edge was slowly improving 5 seconds of stability before the frost broke away. The mana control trait made a difference, letting me feel the way energy spiraled along the blade surface. Once, just to test it, I tried pulling on the other affinity. Space. It was strange. The air around my hand warped faintly, like heat haze. My vision swam, and a thin line of pain lanced behind my eyes. I let go instantly, breathing hard. Space magic wasn't something to toy with lightly. Warning, affinity not stabilized. Recommend training at rank D or higher. Yeah, noted. That evening, I took a short walk to clear my head. The streets were quiet, lanterns swaying in the cold breeze. And then I felt like someone was eyeing me. I turned sharply. A hooded figure stood at the far end of the street, half in shadow. Even from here, I could see they were watching me. When I took a step forward, they turned and slipped into an alley. I didn't follow. Not yet. See, I know this event is a classic trap for me. It will I follow them, and they will gang up, or solo powerful person will kill me. In the alley where no one there, they can escape without living evidence. If someone really was tailing me, then rushing in blindly was the fastest way to end up like the original Michael Willson. Instead, I went back to the inn, nodded to Roderick and Marta, and climbed to my room. I locked the door, leaned my sword against the bed, and sat cross-legged on the floor. The system's faint glow lit the walls. My quest counter ticked down, my stats slowly creeping upward. Whoever was watching me would come again. When they did, I'd be ready. The next 3 days bled together, training at dawn, work at the cafe, drills until my arms and legs shook, then magic practice until the mana strain left me dizzy. By the 4th day, my quest counter flashed green. Day 4 quest complete. Rewards gained, +1 free stat, +2 STA, +100 SP. Total SP, 540. I was getting faster, stronger, more aware. But the shadow that followed me didn't vanish. Every other night, I'd catch a flicker of movement on a rooftop or in an alley. No direct approach, just watching, waiting, until the 10th night. The streets were quiet as I returned from the park, my breath fogging in the cold. This time, the figure didn't hang back. A shadow dropped from a rooftop and landed 5 paces in front of me. Michael Willson. The voice was muffled, but the blade he drew gleamed wickedly under the lamplight. "You weren't supposed to survive the poison." I kept my tone steady. "And you are." While I must pose and strongly grip my sword to a combat position. "You didn't need to know for a person who will die," he said simply, and lunged. The black hooded shadow takes out a dagger and rushed towards me. I barely do attack, then move little far distance from him. I raise my left hand, aiming toward the shadow, and use a skill. Freeze as I spell it. I look forward to see if my spell was working or not, because last 10 days, I have been learning this basic spell from the book. The spell was working as I see that the leg of shadow freeze and stop for a moment. I saw surprises in his eyes. He asked a question to me. "Kid, it seems that you have learned magic all." I didn't answer to his question, as I was thinking how to counterattack and defeat this guy. Good, then I should also increase my payment a little bit. Crackk. The ice below the shadow shattered. The shadow assassin uses mana to blast the ice. Then he rushes attack to his direction. He was fast. Faster than me, probably AE rank. His speed was no joke. His dagger flashed from my ribs, but my sword was already there, parrying with a clang. The shock jolted my arms. I fell back 2 steps, forcing him into the open space between buildings. Your father's little guild doesn't know when to quit, he taunted, striking again. Rival guild. That meant someone had paid him to finish what the poison started. His speed was superior, but my INT and mana manipulation gave me an edge in control. I feinted high, then channeled a thin coat of frost along the lower half of my blade. When he blocked, his dagger caught on the ice. I twisted hard metal to shrieked, his blade snapping in two. He went for my throat barehanded, but I used Shadow Swap, the purple skill that I got. In blinking of moment, I swapped place with the assassin shadow behind him. I used my full strength in this attack when I raised my sword. My sword's hilt slammed into the back of his head. He dropped unconscious. Enemy defeated. Rank E+ assassin. Rewards, +5 stats, +2 STR, +60 mana, +200 SP. After receiving the reward, I left the alley and headed straight towards the inn. Next morning, I went to see if the dead body was there or not. The body was gone before dawn. No doubt some dark maid should have cleaned up. 10 days later, my routine had doubled in intensity. My stamina, speed, and strength had climbed enough that training no longer left me gasping on the floor. That morning, the system chimed. Special quest available. Objective: clear 1 XF rank dungeon. Location: Atlan City outskirts. Reward: +10 free stats, +5,000 SP. Time limited, 60 hours. It seems system finally giving quest. I was also ready to take this task. Because I have rank F+, next 3 days, I will be at E rank soon. So, a F rank dungeon meant weaker monsters, but they were still deadly enough to kill an unprepared rank. And from what I remembered of the game, the Frostpine Hidden Dungeon was a nest of ice fawn wolves. Individually weak, but in packs, they could rip an ordinary human apart in seconds. I gripped my sword. 10 days of pushing myself had gotten me here. It was time to see my status progress. Morning light spilled across the cobbled streets of Atlan City, gilding the glass towers that pierced the sky like the spines of some ancient creature reborn in steel and mana. From the window of the inn, Michael leaned forward, drinking in the sight. It still amazed him. This world, Arcane Era 3892, was both medieval and futuristic at once, stitched together by mana the way Earth had been bound by electricity and silicon. Horse-drawn carriages rolled alongside humming mana cars, sleek metal vehicles inscribed with runes that glowed faintly as they glided soundlessly across the stone road. Above, a mana train cut through the air on invisible tracks, the rune arrays beneath its cars shimmering like blue fire. This world has everything he loved about fantasy: the guilds, the dungeons, the hunters, and wrapped them in the skin of a modern city. Towers lined with glowing wards, crystal street lamps that pulsed with mana instead of bulbs, even vendors with enchanted cooking plates, sizzling meat skewers. Michael pressed a hand against the glass and exhaled. Back on Earth, games had always been an escape. Now, the escape was his reality. In reality, had stakes far greater than any leaderboard. He strapped his sword across his back and left the inn, tightening his coat against the crisp winter air. His body still ached from the previous day's training, but the system's subtle hum made him feel sharper. Like each stat point threaded his muscles tighter, aligned his mana pathways smoother. The streets were alive with motion. A group of dwarves in leather aprons stomped past, muttering about or shipments. An elf in a silver robe floated above the ground on a disk of light, carrying a stack of tomes as tall as himself. Human merchants shouted about discount mana stones while beastkin couriers darted through traffic, tails whipping behind them. Michael let his eyes linger. Every detail was a reminder. This wasn't just pixels on a screen. The air smelled of coal smoke mixed with cinnamon bread. The hum of a mana car engine sent a faint vibration through the cobblestones. Even the sunlight glinting off the mage tower in the distance, it's an impossibly tall spire that spiraled toward the clouds, felt heavier, more real than any 3D renders ever had. He shook himself. Focus. The quest comes first. The Hunter Association branch of Atlan stood at the heart of the city's plaza, a monumental structure that dwarfed the surrounding buildings. Its facade was built of white stone veined with glowing blue mana lines and banners depicting the association's symbol. A sword crossed with a staff over a crystal sun fluttered in the winter wind. In front of it stretched a massive open square. Stalls buzzed with activity. Blacksmiths hammering out swords crackling with enchantments. Alchemists hawking glowing potions and stoppered vials. Mercenary recruiters shouting for fresh blood. The air reeked of sweat, iron, and ozone. For a moment, Michael just stood there, pulse quickening. On Earth, he'd spent years raiding this plaza in the game. But to stand here and to smell the heat of iron, to hear the clink of ruined armor, was something else entirely. Inside the Hunter Association, the association's doors were carved from dark oak reinforced with steel bands. They swung open with a whisper of enchantments, revealing a cavernous interior lit by hovering crystals. It was bustling. Hunters in armor of every kind crowded the hall as they were laughing, arguing, boasting about dungeon runs. Clerks in uniform robes hurried between counters, quills scratching across enchanted parchment that updated itself mid-stroke. The floor was polished obsidian etched with glowing sigils that pulsed like veins beneath the stone. Above, hollow crystals projected maps of nearby dungeons, flashing red where threats had escalated beyond civilian tolerance. Michael swallowed. So, this is the hunter's world in motion. A clerk waved him forward. She was an elf, tall and sharp-featured, with pale green eyes that glowed faintly with mana. Applicant or register hunter? She asked briskly, her tone clipped but not unkind. Applicant, Michael replied, fishing the engraved token from his pocket and placing it on the counter. The number 754 glimmered faintly in the light. It is the same token that was given by the Academy, because it has another function to use it as identity verification. She picked it up, inspected it, and then tapped it against a crystal slate. The slate pulsed, and his information scrolled across its surface. Michael Willson, candidate for the 367th Arcade Hunter Academy Entrance Examination. Authorization confirmed. She slid the token back to him with practiced ease. As a registered applicant, you're permitted to take on low-tier association quests until the exam. Do you wish to receive one now? Yes, Michael said quickly. She handed him a parchment that shimmered faintly as his name inscribed itself across the top. Quest issued. Dungeon Survey. Hidden Instance. Reward. 2 stats. 500 SP. Michael's lips twitched. He knew this one. In the game, it was nothing more than a side quest, buried beneath layers of grind. Most players skipped it, but those who didn't, they discovered one of the earliest hidden dungeons. And hidden dungeons always meant better loot, better EXP, and higher risk. Locations outside the city limits. The clerk continued, her voice efficient. Standard hazard warning applies. The association does not guarantee your safety beyond marked routes. Any harvested mana stones or drops may be registered upon return. Michael nodded, tucking the parchment into his coat. He had no intention of selling everything he found. Not yet. By noon, he stood at the city's central transit hub. The Atlan monorail station towered over him, its vaulted ceiling woven with runes that pulsed like starlight. Travelers crowded the platforms. Merchants with rune-locked chests, beastkin mercenaries in patchwork armor, mages balancing stacks of scrolls. A mechanical chime echoed through the hall. Monorail 7 to Western Outlands. Boarding now. Please present your tokens for verification. Michael filed into the line, clutching his parchment. Ahead, a massive mana train floated just above the tracks, its body sleek metal engraved with intricate runes. Blue energy coursed along its undercarriage, keeping it aloft. When his turn came, He handed over his quest parchment. A uniformed guard, his armor glowing faintly with defensive enchantments, scanned it against a crystal panel. The parchment pulsed once, confirming authenticity, and the guard waved him aboard. Inside, the train was a strange fusion of modern and arcane. The seats were cushioned leather, but each row was separated by glowing ward lines etched into the floor. Overhead, floating crystals projected maps of the rail's route. A soft hum filled the cabin as mana coursed through the trained array. Michael found a seat by the window. As the train lurched forward, the cityscape unfurled outside. Glass towers, spiraling mage towers, crowded marketplaces. The streets teemed with life, carts and mana cars weaving in a dizzying dance. And then, gradually the city thinned. Fields stretched outward, dotted with farms shielded by shimmering ward barriers. Beyond them, the land rolled into hills dusted with snow. In the distance, jagged mountains pierced the horizon, their peaks lost in cloud. Michael exhaled slowly. It was beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. Thoughts on the ride? As the train cut through the countryside, Michael let his head rest against the glass, eyes tracing the blur of the landscape. His system window flickered faintly in his vision. Quest active. Hidden dungeon survey. Objective: locate and investigate the hidden dungeon marked on the quest parchment. Optional: clear the dungeon. Rewards increased proportionally to completion. He smirked. Optional, huh? That's code for do this if you're insane. In the game, this dungeon had been a nightmare at level 1. The monsters weren't balanced, the loot tables were cracked, and the hidden boss at the end had wiped entire raid parties of newbies. Most players only cleared it after grinding for weeks. But Michael wasn't most players. He had the system. He had game knowledge. And he had no intention of wasting time before the academy exam. Still, he wasn't reckless. His hand drifted to the hilt of his sword. He needed to test his strength carefully, pace himself. Overconfidence got you killed faster than ignorance. The train hummed louder as it picked up speed. Crystals embedded along the windows shimmered, reinforcing the barrier spells. Michael watched the glow ripple across the glass and thought of Earth. Of cramped subway cars that reeked of sweat and fried food. Of neon-lit city nights and the static buzz of cheap headsets. Of raids where his guild screamed in triumph at 3 in the morning. His chest tightened. He wondered briefly if his old guild mates had noticed he was gone. If his YouTube subscribers thought he'd just vanished. Then he shook the thought away. That life was over. This was his life now. 2 hours later, the train slid to a stop at a remote station. Unlike the bustling hub of Atlan, this one was little more than a stone platform surrounded by snowy hills. A handful of hunters disembarked, their gear clinking as they adjusted packs and weapons. Michael stepped out into the cold air. His breath plumed white. The parchment in his coat pulsed faintly, guiding him westward. The land here was quieter, wilder. The road was little more than a dirt path lined with ancient wardstones, their glow faint and flickering. Beyond the path, dark forests loomed, their branches heavy with frost. Michael tightened his grip on his sword and began walking. The hidden dungeon wasn't far. In the game, it had been buried in the hills just past the third wardstone. A cave, unmarked on official maps, its entrance concealed by an illusion spell. His boots crunched over frozen earth as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The parchment pulsed brighter with each step. And then he saw it, a jagged crack in the hillside, nearly invisible beneath the snow. The air around it shimmered faintly, like heat haze in the dead of winter. Michael's heart thudded. He'd found it, the hidden dungeon. The moment my boots touched the moss-carpeted ground of the hidden dungeon, I felt it. A weight, heavy and unnatural, pressed against my skin. Not physical pressure, but something else. The kind of weight that came from eyes watching from the dark. The entrance shimmered shut behind me, sealing me off from the outside world. No turning back now. The dungeon stretched before me as a vast cavern, its stone walls slick with moisture. Jagged crystals jutted from the ground, glowing faintly in hues of violet and teal. Their dim light reflected in underground pools, casting warped patterns across the ceiling. The air was damp, sharp with the smell of iron and moss. And beneath it all, a heartbeat, a slow, steady thrum, like the dungeon itself was alive. Ding! Hidden dungeon entered. Difficulty, F rank. Recommended party size, 4 to 6. Warning, you have entered alone. A humorless chuckle escaped me. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. The system pulsed again. Quest activated. Clear the dungeon. Objective, defeat the dungeon boss. Optional, slay all monsters within. Reward. New quest. My grip tightened on the hilt of my sword. All right then, let's grind. The first encounter came sooner than expected. From the corner of the cavern, I heard its sound of skittering claws against stone. The shadows rippled, and then they emerged. 3 cave crawlers. Rank, F-. Appearance, grotesque, centipede-like insects the size of hounds, their bodies covered in obsidian chitin. Each segment pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, casting eerie blue light as they moved. Their mandibles clicked, dripping with venom. The sight made my stomach tighten. In the game, these things were annoying trash mobs, but are quick, poisonous, and relentless. In reality, they looked like something pulled straight out of a nightmare. One hissed, its head jerking before it lunged. My sword was already moving. Clang! Sparks flew as blade met mandible. The force rattled up my arms. The second crawler darted low, aiming for my leg. I twisted, letting instinct and hours of PvP practice guide me. Shadow swap activated. The world blurred, and in a flash, I was behind it. My sword cut through its joint. The creature screeched, ichor spilling across the stone. Monster slain, cave crawler. Plus 50 SP. The system message was crisp, efficient. My heart, on the other hand, hammered. 2 more. I exhaled, channeling mana into Frost Edge. My blade shimmered white-blue, a thin sheet of ice crackling across its surface. The air itself grew cold. When the next crawler lunged, I cut horizontally. The frost-coated steel bit through chitin like glass. The crawler's body split in half with a wet crack. The last one hesitated. For a heartbeat, it almost seemed to recognize me as a predator. Then hunger won. It leapt. I stepped forward, driving my blade straight through its open mandibles and into the soft tissue beneath. A sharp twist, a kick, and the body crumpled. Monster slain, cave crawler. Plus 50 SP. I wiped my blade against the moss, breathing heavy but steady. 3 down. My muscles ached from the tension, but adrenaline coursed stronger. This wasn't a game. Every slip, every hesitation could mean my death. And yet, a grin tugged at my lips. God, I miss this feeling. Deeper within, the dungeon sprawled like a labyrinth. Caverns split into narrow tunnels, each glowing faintly with crystal veins. Some passages were flooded waist-high, the water bitterly cold and crawling with blind fish. Others were choked with vines, whispering faintly as if alive. More monsters waited. Stoneback bats, rank F-winged beasts with rocky hides, swooping in swarms. A quick frost edge cleave tore through the mid-flight. Icefang wolves, rank F+ wolves with white, furred bodies that blended into the cavern walls. One ambushed me from a ledge, but Shadow Swap left it biting empty air before I drove my sword down its spine. Crystal sprites, rank F+ floating shards of light that pelted me with mana bolts. Annoying but fragile. Each fight chipped at my stamina, drained my mana pool, but also sharpened me. I wasn't just swinging a blade. I was adapting, learning to move with my body, adjusting to this world's weight and rhythm. By the time I reached the dungeon's mid-layer, I was drenched in sweat. My arms burned from the sword's swings, and my breathing came ragged. But the glow of the system notifications pushed me forward. I used the strategy of attacking and retreat tactic where I attack first, which give a monster damage, and then I retreat from the zone where the monster will attack. SP accumulated, 450. Not bad for a warm-up. My given gaming experience never betray. After that I take some rest to regenerate my mana. 20 minutes later, I walk forward and then I finally meet the monster that gave me quite trouble when I was new to this dungeon. The mid-boss, Crystalback Ogre. The cavern opened into a chamber the size of a cathedral. Crystals jutted from the walls in jagged spires, their glow bathing the room in violet light. At the center stood a hulking figure, a Crystalback Ogre. Rank E. Height, nearly 4 meters. Its body was stone-gray muscle, and jagged crystal shards grew from its back and shoulders like armor. In its hand, it gripped a massive club formed from fused crystal. The beast bellowed, the sound shaking dust from the ceiling. My throat went dry. Well, this'll be fun. The ogre moved faster than it had any right to. The club came down in a blur. Boom! The ground shattered, sending shards flying. I barely rolled aside, the shockwave rattling my teeth. SHHHH. Too close. I darted in, frost edge igniting across my blade. My sword bit into its thigh, only for sparks to spray. The crystal plating had absorbed the blow. The ogre swung again. I swapped shadows with a crystal spire, blinking across the chamber just as the club obliterated where I'd been. Stone chunks flew like shrapnel. Chuck! I grimaced. All right, weak points it is. The stomach, the joints, the eyes. The ogre roared and charged. Each step shook the cavern. I sprinted forward too, closing the gap at the last second. The club came down, shadow swap. I blinked past its swing, landing beside its exposed ribs. My blade drove upward, piercing flesh between the crystals. Slash! Ruh! The ogre howled in pain, swiping at me with its massive hand. I ducked, rolled, felt the rush of air tear past my head. Blood sprayed from the wound I'd carved, thick and steaming. Again, slush. I pushed forward, weaving between swings, cutting at the soft gaps in its armor. Every strike was calculated, desperate, burning through my stamina. Finally, with a bellow that rattled the cavern, the ogre fell to one knee. Its chest heaved, blood pooling beneath it. I raised my sword, channeled everything into frost edge, and leapt. The blade sank into its neck, ice spreading like veins. One last twist, and the beast collapsed. Monster slain, Crystalback Ogre. Plus 300 SP. I slid off its corpse, gasping for breath. My arms trembled, my lungs burned, but I was alive, and my grin was wider than ever. Beyond the ogre's chamber stretched a spiral staircase of stone, leading down into darkness. The crystals thinned, their glow fading, until the only light was the pale flicker of my sword's mana. The air grew colder, heavier. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, leading me toward the heartbeat I'd felt since entering. At the bottom lay the final chamber, a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows. Pools of black water reflected faint pinpricks of light, and at its center, curled upon a stone dais, was the boss, a Shadowfang direwolf. Rank E+. Its fur was pitch black, blending seamlessly into the dark. Its eyes glowed molten gold, watching me with intelligence far sharper than the crawler's or ogre. Shadows pooled around its paws, writhing like living smoke. The wolf rose, muscles rippling beneath its pelt. Fangs like daggers gleamed in the dim light. The chamber fell silent. Then the system chimed. Boss encounter, Shadowfang direwolf. I raised my blade, every nerve alight. All right, big guy, I muttered. Let's see what you've got. I take a deep breath and look at the boss monster. The wolf snarled, and the shadows surged, and the battle began. To be continued. Ding. Dungeon boss defeated. Pending. Hidden dungeon clear. Reward available. 10 minutes ago. The air was heavy, so heavy it felt like I was breathing through water. The oppressive silence of the cavern clung to me like a second skin, broken only by the slow ripple of shadow that coiled around the massive beast before me. The Shadowfang dire wolf stood tall, a predator built for darkness. Its fur shimmered with an unnatural void-black sheen, devouring the light around it. Its molten golden eyes pierced the gloom, intelligent and merciless. Every slow movement of its shoulders radiated restrained violence, like a bowstring pulled taut. I swallowed, my throat dry. The system chimed, cruelly calm. Boss encounter, Shadowfang direwolf. Rank D+. Warning, this foe exceeds recommended solo clearance level. Yeah, no kidding. The wolf's lips curled back, revealing fangs longer than daggers. Its growl reverberated through the cavern, low and guttural, vibrating in my chest like a drumbeat. I adjusted my grip on the sword, lowering my stance, blade angled slightly toward the beast. My breathing slowed, body coiling with tension. This wasn't like the crawlers or the ogre. This was a hunter staring down prey. Except this time, I was the prey. The wolf moved. A blur of black. I barely saw the strike before it was on me. Its paw slammed down like a hammer, claws gouging trenches into the stone where I'd been standing a heartbeat earlier. I threw myself into a roll, instinct screaming. The air whistled past my ear as its claws tore through the space I'd occupied. Too fast. The beast whirled, snapping its jaws with a sound like breaking stone. I raised my sword to block. Crash. The impact nearly tore my arms out of their sockets. My boots slid across the cavern floor, scraping against stone as the wolf's massive fangs clamped against the blade. My arms shook with strain, muscles screaming. Its strength was overwhelming. Then shadows surged. Dark tendrils whipped out from beneath its paws, writhing like snakes. They lashed to my legs, hungry to bind. Not today, I spat, forcing mana into my skill. Shadow swap. In an instant, the world blurred. My body vanished, reappearing behind a jagged crystal spire at the far edge of the chamber. The wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air, its golden eyes narrowing as it whirled. My lungs heaved. Sweat stung my eyes. My blade trembled faintly in my grip. So this is the difference between fodder and a boss. The wolf didn't wait. It lunged again, faster this time, shadows trailing like smoke behind it. Its claws carved through the spire I'd hidden behind, shattering it like glass. Shards exploded in every direction. I ducked low, darting under its swipe, and slashed upward with frost edge ignited. My sword gleamed pale blue, the blade biting deep into its foreleg. A howl ripped through the cavern, raw and furious. Black ichor sprayed across the stone, sizzling where it landed. The wolf staggered a step, but didn't falter. Instead, the shadows thickened. The floor beneath me shifted, the wolf's magic weaving the cavern into its hunting ground. Pools of darkness spread across the stone, writhing, pulling at my boots. I cursed, wrenching myself free with a burst of mana. The wolf used that instant. Whoosh. Its body blurred, vanishing into the shadows. My pulse spiked. Where? The attack came from behind. I barely twisted in time, raising my sword to intercept the fangs that snapped at my neck. The clash rattled my bones. The wolf's breath was hot and foul, its eyes burning with killing intent inches from mine. With a grunt, I shoved upward, forcing it back just enough to create space. My knee drove forward, slamming into its jaw. The beast snarled, recoiling, shadows writhing more violently. I leapt back, panting. My mana reserves were draining faster than I wanted. Shadow Swap ate through energy with every desperate dodge. Frost Edge burned with each strike. I couldn't keep this up forever. I needed a plan. Eyes, joints, throat. Soft targets. Keep moving. Bait the shadows. Strike when it overcommits. The wolf growled again, pacing, golden eyes locked on me. It was cautious now, circling, testing me. Not mindless like the ogre, it was smart. A hunter. I couldn't let it dictate the rhythm. I charged. The wolf lunged to meet me, claws sweeping wide. I ducked beneath the arc, blade flashing upward. The steel tore across its chest, frost blooming across its fur. The wolf howled, retaliating with a slam of its paw. The impact sent a shock wave through the cavern, knocking me off balance. My boots skidded, and the shadows seized the chance, tendrils coiling around my ankle. Shit! The wolf's fangs descended. Shadow Swap. I blinked away at the last instant, reappearing behind it. My sword plunged deep into its flank, driving through muscle and bone. The wolf roared, twisting violently, throwing me aside like a rag doll. I crashed against the cavern wall, pain flaring white-hot across my ribs. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs. I coughed, spitting copper. My vision swam. My sword lay a few feet away, glinting in the faint light. The wolf advanced, shadows curling hungrily at its paws. Its wound bled freely, but its strength hadn't faltered. If anything, its fury had doubled. I forced myself up, staggering to my sword. My hand wrapped around the hilt, steadying despite the ache in my bones. One chance. That's all I needed. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, centering myself. My breathing slowed. My muscles remembered the countless hours of drills, of duels, of PvP battles where a single mistake meant defeat. The wolf lunged. I moved. Time seemed to stretch. Its claws descended in a blur, aiming to tear me in half. My foot pivoted, weight shifting just out of its arc. My blade rose, not wide, not wild. Precise. A swordsman's cut, clean and sharp. Steel met flesh. The frost edge ignited at the same instant, mana flaring brilliantly. The blade carved a line of ice across the wolf's throat. The beast's momentum carried it past me, a strangled howl tearing free. It staggered, shadows flickering wildly as its golden eyes dimmed. It collapsed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Shadows evaporated, retreating into nothingness. Silence returned. I stood there, chest heaving, sword dripping with black ichor. My arms trembled, exhaustion threatening to drop me to my knees. But I was still standing. The system chimed. Boss slain. Shadowfang Direwolf. Dungeon cleared. Quest complete. Clear a F-rank dungeon. Reward. Plus 10 stats. 5,000 SP. Extra reward. Hidden dungeon cleared. Reward. Plus 10 stats. 3,000 SP. Total SP. 13,300. Unallocated stats. Plus 20. I exhaled, a laugh bubbling up despite the ache in my ribs. Not cleared. The tension bled from my body all at once, leaving only bone-deep fatigue. I sheathed my sword and closed the system window. The glowing interface faded, leaving me alone in the dim chamber. The return portal shimmered open in the center of the cavern, a swirling oval of pale light. I didn't waste time. Limping slightly, I stepped through, the dungeon dissolving around me in a cascade of motes. The next instant, I stood back at the entrance where it had all begun. The sky above was tinged orange with late afternoon light. Birds cried in the distance. The normal world. I drew a slow, steady breath, savoring it. Alive, stronger, and with enough SP to make real progress. But right now, I needed rest. Station Junction 178. The city was alive with motion as I returned. Mana cars zipped along glowing tracks, their crystal engines humming softly. High-rise towers pierced the sky, their surfaces etched with runes that shimmered like neon. The streets bustled with people, hunters, merchants, scholars in robes, even beast folk haggling at open-air stalls. I hailed a mana taxi, the crystalline vehicle humming as it carried me to the central train station. The building loomed massive, an architectural marvel of glass and floating glyphs. Mana orbs drifted near the ceiling, casting soft light. Inside, the station was alive with sound, announcements echoing magically, the chatter of travelers, the rhythmic chime of departing trains. I bought my ticket, swiping it across the room gate. My body felt heavy, exhaustion pulling at me like chains. By the time I found my seat and collapsed into it, sleep was already dragging me under. "Excuse me, you're sitting in my seat." A voice. Female. Clear, melodic, yet edged with annoyance. My eyes cracked open, reluctantly. And then I froze. Standing before me was a girl about my age. Her hair was a cascade of pale blue silk, shimmering faintly like water under moonlight. Her eyes were crystal clear, sharp and beautiful, like untouched glaciers. Her face was delicate, almost doll-like, yet full of life. Recognition slammed into me. Aurelia Miller, one of the main characters. Future billionaire alchemist. Hidden class, warlock with affinities for water and life. In the game, she was destined to shape entire economies with her potions, her influence reaching kingdoms. And right now, she was glaring at me. "Have you seen enough of my face?" she asked, voice flat and patient. I blinked, realizing too late that I'd been staring. And no, I wasn't. Well, yes, I was, but not like that. Her eyes narrowed in clear disinterest. She raised her ticket. "Seat 36. You're in it." Heat rushed to my face. "Right, sorry." I scrambled up, sliding aside to the next seat over. She sat gracefully, adjusting her cloak without sparing me another glance. For 20 minutes, silence stretched between us. The rhythmic hum of the train filled the space, soothing in its constancy. At last, my stop arrived. Quietly, I rose, shoulder in my bag. No words, no drama. I didn't need trouble. Not with her. Aurelia Miller's background was too dangerous. The only daughter of Martin Miller, an SS rank hunter, rank SS+, guild leader of Astor Hall, ranked 8th worldwide. A man infamous not only for his power, but for his daughter-con tendencies. Mess with Aurelia, and you didn't just poke a bear. You poked a dragon that would burn the world for her. I slipped off the train without a backward glance. A taxi ride later, I was back at the inn. My body ached, exhaustion gnawing at every muscle. But as I collapsed onto the bed, one thought lingered. Today had been just the beginning, and tomorrow, the real story would start. The moment my boots touched the moss-carpeted ground of the hidden dungeon, I felt it. A weight, heavy and unnatural, pressed against my skin. Not physical pressure, but something else. The kind of weight that came from eyes watching from the dark. The entrance shimmered shut behind me, sealing me off from the outside world. No turning back now. The dungeon stretched before me as a vast cavern, its stone walls slick with moisture. Jagged crystals jutted from the ground, glowing faintly in hues of violet and teal. Their dim light reflected in underground pools, casting warped patterns across the ceiling. The air was damp, sharp with the smell of iron and moss. And beneath it all, a heartbeat, a slow, steady thrum, like the dungeon itself was alive. Ding! Hidden dungeon entered. Difficulty, F rank. Recommended party size, 4 to 6. Warning, you have entered alone. A humorless chuckle escaped me. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. The system pulsed again. Quest activated. Clear the dungeon. Objective, defeat the dungeon boss. Optional, slay all monsters within. Reward. New quest. My grip tightened on the hilt of my sword. All right then, let's grind. The first encounter came sooner than expected. From the corner of the cavern, I heard its sound of skittering claws against stone. The shadows rippled, and then they emerged. 3 cave crawlers. Rank, F-. Appearance, grotesque, centipede-like insects the size of hounds, their bodies covered in obsidian chitin. Each segment pulsed faintly with bioluminescence, casting eerie blue light as they moved. Their mandibles clicked, dripping with venom. The sight made my stomach tighten. In the game, these things were annoying trash mobs, but are quick, poisonous, and relentless. In reality, they looked like something pulled straight out of a nightmare. One hissed, its head jerking before it lunged. My sword was already moving. Clang! Sparks flew as blade met mandible. The force rattled up my arms. The second crawler darted low, aiming for my leg. I twisted, letting instinct and hours of PvP practice guide me. Shadow, swap activated, the world blurred, and in a flash, I was behind it. My sword cut through its joint. The creature screeched, ichor spilling across the stone. Monster slain, cave crawler, plus 50 SP. The system message was crisp, efficient. My heart, on the other hand, hammered. 2 more. I exhaled, channeling mana into Frost Edge. My blade shimmered white-blue, a thin sheet of ice crackling across its surface. The air itself grew cold. When the next crawler lunged, I cut horizontally. The frost-coated steel bit through chitin like glass. The crawler's body split in half with a wet crack. The last one hesitated. For a heartbeat, it almost seemed to recognize me as a predator. Then hunger won. It leapt. I stepped forward, driving my blade straight through its open mandibles and into the soft tissue beneath. A sharp twist, a kick, and the body crumbled. Monster slain, cave crawler. Plus 50 SP. I wiped my blade against the moss, breathing heavy but steady. 3 down. My muscles ached from the tension, but adrenaline coursed stronger. This wasn't a game. Every slip, every hesitation could mean my death. And yet, a grin tugged at my lips. God, I missed this feeling. Deeper within, the dungeon sprawled like a labyrinth. Caverns split into narrow tunnels, each glowing faintly with crystal veins. Some passages were flooded waist-high, the water bitterly cold and crawling with blind fish. Others were choked with vines, whispering faintly as if alive. More monsters waited. Stoneback bats, rank F-winged beasts with rocky hides, swooping in swarms. A quick frost edge cleave tore through the mid-flight. Icefang wolves, rank F+ wolves with white, furred bodies that blended into the cavern walls. One ambushed me from a ledge, but Shadow Swap left it biting empty air before I drove my sword down its spine. Crystal sprites, rank F+ floating shards of light that pelted me with mana bolts. Annoying but fragile. Each fight chipped at my stamina, drained my mana pool, but also sharpened me. I wasn't just swinging a blade. I was adapting, learning to move with my body, adjusting to this world's weight and rhythm. By the time I reached the dungeon's mid-layer, I was drenched in sweat. My arms burned from the sword swings, and my breathing came ragged. But the glow of the system notifications pushed me forward. I used the strategy of attacking and retreat tactic, where I attack first, which give the monster damage, and then I retreat from the zone where the monster will attack. SP accumulated. 450. Not bad for a warm-up. My given gaming experience never betray. After that, I take some rest to regenerate my mana. 20 minutes later, I walk forward, and then I finally meet the monster that gave me quite trouble when I was new to this dungeon. The mid-boss, Crystalback Ogre. The cavern opened into a chamber the size of a cathedral. Crystals jutted from the walls in jagged spires, their glow bathing the room in violet light. At the center stood a hulking figure, a Crystalback Ogre. Rank E. Height, nearly 4 meters. Its body was stone-gray muscle, and jagged crystal shards grew from its back and shoulders like armor. In its hand, it gripped a massive club formed from fused crystal. The beast bellowed, the sound shaking dust from the ceiling. My throat went dry. Well, this'll be fun. The ogre moved faster than it had any right to. The club came down in a blur. Boom! The ground shattered, sending shards flying. I barely rolled aside, the shockwave rattling my teeth. SHHHH. Too close. I darted in, frost edge igniting across my blade. My sword bit into its thigh, only for sparks to spray. The crystal plating had absorbed the blow. The ogre swung again. I swapped shadows with a crystal spire, blinking across the chamber just as the club obliterated where I'd been. Stone chunks flew like shrapnel. Chuck! I grimaced. All right, weak points it is. The stomach, the joints, the eyes. The ogre roared and charged. Each step shook the cavern. I sprinted forward too, closing the gap at the last second. The club came down, shadow swap. I blinked past its swing, landing beside its exposed ribs. My blade drove upward, piercing flesh between the crystals. Slash! Ruh! The ogre howled in pain, swiping at me with its massive hand. I ducked, rolled, felt the rush of air tear past my head. Blood sprayed from the wound I'd carved, thick and steaming. Again, slush! I pushed forward, weaving between swings, cutting at the soft gaps in its armor. Every strike was calculated, desperate, burning through my stamina. Finally, with a bellow that rattled the cavern, the ogre fell to one knee. Its chest heaved, blood pooling beneath it. I raised my sword, channeled everything into frost edge, and leapt. The blade sank into its neck, ice spreading like veins. One last twist, and the beast collapsed. Monster slain, Crystalback Ogre. Plus 300 SP. I slid off its corpse, gasping for breath. My arms trembled, my lungs burned, but I was alive. and my grin was wider than ever. Beyond the ogre's chamber stretched a spiral staircase of stone, leading down into darkness. The crystals thinned, their glow fading, until the only light was the pale flicker of my sword's mana. The air grew colder, heavier. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, leading me toward the heartbeat I'd felt since entering. At the bottom lay the final chamber, a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows. Pools of black water reflected faint pinpricks of light, and at its center, curled upon a stone dais, was the boss, a shadow-fang dire wolf. Rank E+. Its fur was pitch black, blending seamlessly into the dark. Its eyes glowed molten gold, watching me with intelligence far sharper than the crawler's or ogre. Shadows pooled around its paws, writhing like living smoke. The wolf rose, muscles rippling beneath its pelt. Fangs like daggers gleamed in the dim light. The chamber fell silent. Then the system chimed. Boss encounter, shadow-fang dire wolf. I raised my blade, every nerve alight. All right, big guy, I muttered. Let's see what you've got. I take a deep breath and look at the boss monster. The wolf snarled, and the shadows surged. And the battle began. 10 minutes ago, the air was heavy, so heavy it felt like I was breathing through water. The oppressive silence of the cavern clung to me like a second skin, broken only by the slow ripple of shadow that coiled around the massive beast before me. The shadow-fang dire wolf stood tall, a predator built for darkness. Its fur shimmered with an unnatural void-black sheen, devouring the light around it. Its molten golden eyes pierced the gloom, intelligent and merciless. Every slow movement of its shoulders radiated restrained violence, like a bowstring pulled taut. I swallowed, my throat dry. The system chimed, cruelly calm. Boss encounter, shadow-fang dire wolf. Rank D+. Warning, this foe exceeds recommended solo clearance level. Yeah, no kidding. The wolf's lips curled back, revealing fangs longer than daggers. Its growl reverberated through the cavern, low and guttural, vibrating in my chest like a drumbeat. I adjusted my grip on the sword, lowering my stance, blade angled slightly toward the beast. My breathing slowed, body coiling with tension. This wasn't like the crawlers or the ogre. This was a hunter staring down prey. Except this time, I was the prey. The wolf moved, a blur of black. I barely saw the strike before it was on me. Its paw slammed down like a hammer, claws gouging trenches into the stone where I'd been standing a heartbeat earlier. I threw myself into a roll, instincts screaming. The air whistled past my ear as its claws tore through the space I'd occupied. Too fast. The beast whirled, snapping its jaws with a sound like breaking stone. I raised my sword to block. Crash! The impact nearly tore my arms out of their sockets. My boots slid across the cavern floor, scraping against stone as the wolf's massive fangs clamped against the blade. My arms shook with strain, muscles screaming. Its strength was overwhelming. Then shadows surged. Dark tendrils whipped out from beneath its paws, writhing like snakes. They lashed at my legs, hungry to bind. Not today, I spat, forcing mana into my skill. Shadow swap. In an instant, the world blurred. My body vanished, reappearing behind a jagged crystal spire at the far edge of the chamber. The wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air, its golden eyes narrowing as it whirled. My lungs heaved. Sweat stung my eyes. My blade trembled faintly in my grip. So this is the difference between fodder and a boss. The wolf didn't wait. It lunged again, faster this time, shadows trailing like smoke behind it. Its claws carved through the spire I'd hidden behind, shattering it like glass. Shards exploded in every direction. I ducked low, darting under its swipe, and slashed upward with frost edge ignited. My sword gleamed pale blue, the blade biting deep into its foreleg. A howl ripped through the cavern, raw and furious. Black ichor sprayed across the stone, sizzling where it landed. The wolf staggered a step but didn't falter. Instead, the shadows thickened. The floor beneath me shifted, the wolf's magic weaving the cavern into its hunting ground. Pools of darkness spread across the stone, writhing, pulling at my boots. I cursed, wrenching myself free with a burst of mana. The wolf used that instant. Whoosh! Its body blurred, vanishing into the shadows. My pulse spiked. Where? The attack came from behind. I barely twisted in time, raising my sword to intercept the fangs that snapped at my neck. The clash rattled my bones. The wolf's breath was hot and foul, its eyes burning with killing intent inches from mine. With a grunt, I shoved upward, forcing it back just enough to create space. My knee drove forward, slamming into its jaw. The beast snarled, recoiling, shadows writhing more violently. I leapt back, panting. My mana reserves were draining faster than I wanted. Shadow Swap ate through energy with every desperate dodge. Frost Edge burned with each strike. I couldn't keep this up forever. I needed a plan. Eyes, joints, throat. Soft targets. Keep moving. Bait the shadows. Strike when it overcommits. The wolf growled again, pacing, golden eyes locked on me. It was cautious now, circling, testing me. Not mindless like the ogre, it was smart. A hunter. I couldn't let it dictate the rhythm. I charged. The wolf lunged to meet me, claws sweeping wide. I ducked beneath the arc, blade flashing upward. The steel tore across its chest, frost blooming across its fur. The wolf howled, retaliating with a slam of its paw. The impact sent a shock wave through the cavern, knocking me off balance. My boots skidded, and the shadows seized the chance, tendrils coiling around my ankle. Shit! The wolf's fangs descended. Shadow Swap. I blinked away at the last instant, reappearing behind it. My sword plunged deep into its flank, driving through muscle and bone. The wolf roared, twisting violently, throwing me aside like a rag doll. I crashed against the cavern wall, pain flaring white-hot across my ribs. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs. I coughed, spitting copper. My vision swam. My sword lay a few feet away, glinting in the faint light. The wolf advanced, shadows curling hungrily at its paws. Its wound bled freely, but its strength hadn't faltered. If anything, its fury had doubled. I forced myself up, staggering to my sword. My hand wrapped around the hilt, steadying despite the ache in my bones. One chance. That's all I needed. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, centering myself. My breathing slowed. My muscles remembered the countless hours of drills, of duels, of PvP battles where a single mistake meant defeat. The wolf lunged. I moved. Time seemed to stretch. Its claws descended in a blur, aiming to tear me in half. My foot pivoted, weight shifting just out of its arc. My blade rose, not wide, not wild. Precise. A swordsman's cut, clean and sharp. Steel met flesh. The frost edge ignited at the same instant, mana flaring brilliantly. The blade carved a line of ice across the wolf's throat. The beast's momentum carried it past me, a strangled howl tearing free. It staggered, shadows flickering wildly as its golden eyes dimmed. It collapsed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Shadows evaporated, retreating into nothingness. Silence returned. I stood there, chest heaving, sword dripping with black ichor. My arms trembled, exhaustion threatening to drop me to my knees. But I was still standing. The system chimed. Boss slain. Shadowfang Direwolf. Dungeon cleared. Quest complete. Clear a F-rank dungeon. Reward. Plus 10 stats, 5,000 SP. Extra reward. Hidden dungeon cleared. Reward. Plus 10 stats, 3,000 SP. Total SP. 13,300. Unallocated stats. Plus 20. I exhaled, a laugh bubbling up despite the ache in my ribs. Cleared. The tension bled from my body all at once, leaving only bone-deep fatigue. I sheathed my sword and closed the system window. The glowing interface faded, leaving me alone in the dim chamber. The return portal shimmered open in the center of the cavern, a swirling oval of pale light. I didn't waste time. Limping slightly, I stepped through, the dungeon dissolving around me in a cascade of motes. The next instant, I stood back at the entrance where it had all begun. The sky above was tinged orange with late afternoon light. Birds cried in the distance. The normal world. I drew a slow, steady breath, savoring it. Alive, stronger, and with enough SP to make real progress. But right now, I needed rest. Station Junction 178. The city was alive with motion as I returned. Mana cars zipped along glowing tracks, their crystal engines humming softly. High-rise towers pierced the sky, their surfaces etched with runes that shimmered like neon. The streets bustled with people, hunters, merchants, scholars in robes, even beast folk haggling at open-air stalls. I hailed a mana taxi, the crystalline vehicle humming as it carried me to the central train station. The building loomed massive, an architectural marvel of glass and floating glyphs. Mana orbs drifted near the ceiling, casting soft light. Inside, the station was alive with sound, announcements echoing magically, the chatter of travelers, the rhythmic chime of departing trains. I bought my ticket, swiping it across the room gate. My body felt heavy, exhaustion pulling at me like chains. By the time I found my seat and collapsed into it, sleep was already dragging me under. "Excuse me, you're sitting in my seat." A voice. Female. Clear, melodic, yet edged with annoyance. My eyes cracked open, reluctantly, and then I froze. Standing before me was a girl about my age. Her hair was a cascade of pale blue silk, shimmering faintly like water under moonlight. Her eyes were crystal clear, sharp and beautiful, like untouched glaciers. Her face was delicate, almost doll-like, yet full of life. Recognition slammed into me. Aurelia Miller, one of the main characters. Future billionaire alchemist. Hidden class. Warlock with affinities for water and life. In the game, she was destined to shape entire economies with her potions, her influence reaching kingdoms. And right now, she was glaring at me. "Have you seen enough of my face?" she asked, voice flat and patient. I blinked, realizing too late that I'd been staring. And no, I wasn't. Well, yes, I was, but not like that, Her eyes narrowed in clear disinterest. She raised her ticket. "Seat 36. You're in it." Heat rushed to my face. "Right, sorry." I scrambled up, sliding aside to the next seat over. She sat gracefully, adjusting her cloak without sparing me another glance. For 20 minutes, silence stretched between us. The rhythmic hum of the train filled the space, soothing in its constancy. At last, my stop arrived. Quietly, I rose, shouldering my bag. No words, no drama. I didn't need trouble. Not with her. Aurelia Miller's background was too dangerous. The only daughter of Martin Miller, an SS rank hunter, rank SS+, guild leader of Asterhall, ranked 8th worldwide. A man infamous not only for his power, but for his daughter-con tendencies. Mess with Aurelia, and you didn't just poke a bear. You poked a dragon that would burn the world for her. I slipped off the train without a backward glance. A taxi ride later, I was back at the inn. My body ached, exhaustion gnawing at every muscle. But as I collapsed onto the bed, one thought lingered. Today had been just the beginning. And tomorrow, the real story would start. The morning sun slipped lazily through the curtains of the inn, its golden rays spilling across the wooden floorboards. Michael opened his eyes, stretching out with a groan. His body still carried traces of fatigue from the dungeon and the train ride, but his mind was sharper than ever. The cliffhanger thought from last night lingered like a weight in his chest, the Drakron sword. If the lore from the game was correct, that sealed weapon could change everything. A divine weapon wasn't something ordinary hunters stumbled upon. Even Leon, the protagonist, never obtained this one in the main storyline. It had only been a whispered what if in an extra side story. Michael ran a hand through his hair and sat up. If I can find it, it'll give me a huge edge before the academy exam. Maybe even guarantee Class A. The faint scent of baking bread drifted up from below. His stomach growled. Guess it's time to face the innkeeper couple. When he came downstairs, the innkeeper's wife was already bustling about, laying plates of steaming eggs and bread for early risers. The moment she spotted him, her face broke into a relieved smile. "Oh, Michael, you're awake," she exclaimed, wiping her flour-dusted hands on her apron before rushing over. "Come fast. Today I made some new dishes for breakfast." Her warmth made Michael chuckle awkwardly. "I had some work to do before the entrance exam. Sorry if I will not be staying here now. I will leave today." The innkeeper himself, leaned against the counter. "So, you are leaving? Don't forget us, kid, when you become a good hunter." Michael nodded firmly. "I know. Don't worry. I'll not forget Auntie and Uncle." The couple exchanged a glance. Then the innkeeper's wife patted his shoulder. "Eat something first. You look like you're about to run headlong into a storm." Michael smiled faintly. She's not wrong. He ate quickly, savoring the simple but hearty food. Every bite grounded him in the reality of this world. Warm bread, spiced eggs, a cup of steaming herbal tea. It was different from the fast food world he had come from, yet oddly comforting. When he was finished, he thanked them both and excused himself, heading back to his room. He couldn't afford to waste time. Today was the day he would begin his journey toward the Black Forest. The Hunter Market District was already alive when Michael arrived. The streets buzzed with voices, Manikar's word passed on glowing tracks, and neon blue signs floated above shops advertising enchanted gear, potions, and weapons. It was a strange blend of medieval and futuristic aesthetics, stone roads beneath hovering crystal lamps, blacksmith hammering at glowing steel beside vendors selling mechanical gadgets powered by mana. Michael tightened his cloak and made his way through the crowd. Hunters in leather armor bartered with potion vendors. Mages in flowing robes consulted rune engravers for talismans. He even spotted a dwarf blacksmith adjusting a mana-powered rifle for a human client. The air itself hummed with magic, thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and sizzling mana crystals. Health potions, 2 for 5 silver. "Don't risk your life for a few coins," shouted one vendor. "Mana stones fresh from the mines. Stable output, guaranteed quality," cried another. Michael ignored most of it, focusing on essentials. He picked up a few health and mana potions, some dried rations, and a sturdy map of the region. He considered browsing the weapon stalls, but shook his head. Pointless. No weapon here will matter once I get the Drakron sword. Still, he needed to look inconspicuous. Buying nothing at all would draw suspicion. So he grabbed a plain steel short sword as a backup, strapping it to his side. By the time he left the district, his coin pouch felt significantly lighter. But he was prepared. Currency. 1 platinum equals 100 gold. 1 gold coin equals 100 sliver. 1 sliver coin equals 100 copper coin. Cash currency. 1 sliver equals 100 Rio. Rio is similar to dollar. Location. Train station. The train station loomed ahead like a giant glass and steel fortress, its crystalline pillars shimmering with embedded runes. A line of passengers shuffled forward, tickets glowing faintly as they passed through magical scanners. Michael purchased his own without trouble, then boarded. Inside, the mana train was a marvel. Sleek crystal panels lined the walls, glowing faintly with circulating energy. The seats were cushioned and arranged in tiers, with transparent windows offering sweeping views of the landscape. Hunters, merchants, and travelers filled the compartments, some chatting, others meditating. Michael settled into his seat near the window. The train gave a low hum, then shot forward with breathtaking speed, the world outside blurring into streaks of green and gold. In the game, this was just fast travel, a few seconds of loading screen. But now, he pressed his hand against the glass, watching the countryside roll by in vivid detail. Villages nestled between hills, rivers glimmered beneath sunlight, and mana beasts occasionally darted through the forests. Now it feels real. Across the aisle, a group of mercenaries laughed boisterously, boasting about their last hunt. One of them wore a necklace made of fangs. Another carried a massive axe nearly as tall as himself. Michael eyed them briefly, then looked away. F rank, maybe D rank at best. They wouldn't survive 5 minutes in the Black Forest depths. The train slowed after several hours, pulling into a station marked with glowing runes, Iron Shade. Iron Shade Town. Michael stepped out and immediately felt the difference. The air was heavier, colder. The town of Iron Shade was built like a fortress, its walls thick with iron plating and mana wards. Hunters here looked sharper, more dangerous. Scars crisscrossed their arms and faces, and their weapons glowed faintly with enchantments. The streets weren't bustling like in the capital. Instead, there was a constant tension in the air. People moved quickly, eyes scanning their surroundings as if danger might leap from the shadows at any moment. Michael found a tavern to gather information. The place smelled of smoke and ale, dimly lit with only a few crystal lanterns. He slipped into a corner, listening quietly. Another hunting party didn't come back yesterday. They went into the Black Forest, didn't they? Idiots. That place swallows men whole. Not just men. Even an S rank once disappeared in there. Michael's eyes narrowed. Rumors, half-truths. But they're not wrong about the danger. He didn't join the conversations. Instead, he finished a simple meal, then rented a small, creaky room for the night. Tomorrow, he would enter the Black Forest. Tomorrow, the trial of the Drakron sword would begin. The next morning, Michael left Iron Shade before dawn. The sky was still a shade of indigo, the air crisp with early spring chill. Few people were on the streets, and the town gates creaked open reluctantly as the guards gave him skeptical looks. Going to the Black Forest? One asked, his voice rough from lack of sleep. Michael nodded. Yes. The guard gave a low whistle and shook his head. Hope you've written a will, boy. Michael didn't respond. He pulled his cloak tighter and walked out into the wilderness. By midday, he stood at the edge of the Black Forest. The trees loomed like titans, their trunks as wide as houses, their branches twisting into the sky. A perpetual fog clung to the ground, weaving between roots and rocks. Birds were absent. The only sound was the faint rustle of unseen creatures moving in the underbrush. Michael exhaled slowly. The game had depicted the Black Forest as a gloomy place, but here, in reality, it was suffocating. The very air carried an oppressive weight, thick with primal mana. His senses sharpened automatically, adrenaline humming through his veins. This is no ordinary dungeon. This is nature itself, unfiltered and untamed. He stepped inside. Immediately, the shadows seemed to close around him. His boots sank into damp soil, the smell of moss and decay overwhelming. He drew his sword. Its steel gleamed faintly in the dim light, steadying his nerves. A/N, Shadow Wolves, rank F+. The growl came first, low, guttural, vibrating through the fog. Then yellow eyes appeared, glowing like coals in the darkness. Michael tightened his grip. Shadow Wolves, he muttered. He remembered their mechanics from the game. F+ rank monsters, fast and coordinated, always hunting in packs. The first lunged, a blur of black fur and teeth. Michael sidestepped, blade flashing. Steel met flesh, slicing across its flank. The wolf yelped and fell, but three more emerged immediately, circling him with fluid, practiced motions. They're testing me. Michael steadied his breathing. Mana flowed through his veins as he activated mana manipulation, coating his sword with a faint azure glow. He stepped lightly, adjusting his stance. The wolves struck simultaneously. Michael moved. His sword arced in a swift, precise slash, cutting through the first wolf's neck. He pivoted, slamming his boot into the second's ribs before its jaws could close on his arm. The third snapped at his back, but he ducked, spinning low, and drove his blade upward through its chest. All three collapsed in less than 10 seconds. Michael exhaled, steady but alert. Not bad, but this is only the beginning. Deeper in, the fog thickened. A faint clicking sound echoed through the trees. Michael recognized it instantly. Goblins. They emerged in ragged clusters, green-skinned, hunched creatures with glowing red eyes and crude weapons of bone and rusted steel. Individually weak, but dangerous in groups. 10 of them this time. The leader screeched, raising a jagged spear. The others surged forward. Michael's sword flashed. His first swing severed 2 goblins in one motion, but the others pressed in. A club whistled toward his skull. He ducked, countering with a horizontal slash that spilled another's innards. One jab with a spear. Michael caught it with his left hand, twisting it aside, then drove his knee into the goblin's chest before finishing it with a clean thrust. More came from the flanks. He spun, letting mana surge down his blade, releasing a thin arc of blue light. 3 goblins fell, their bodies cleaved in half. The leader shrieked in fury and leapt at him. Michael sidestepped, then executed a perfect overhead cut. His blade split the goblin from skull to waist. The clearing fell silent, broken only by the sound of his steady breathing. Hours passed as Michael pushed deeper. His cloak was torn in places, and sweat slicked his forehead, but his eyes remained sharp. He fought more monsters along the way. Giant centipedes, E rank, thorned lizards, F+, and a lone direboar, E+. Each battle tested him, forcing him to refine his movements and use his mana wisely. But none of them slowed him for long, because he knew what lay ahead. The lore from the game was clear. Deep within the Black Forest, beneath an ancient tree, sealed by a stone with a symbol, there lay the Drakron sword. Michael's pulse quickened when he saw it. The fog parted, revealing a colossal tree that dwarfed all others. Its trunk was gnarled and scarred, its roots stretching like serpents across the ground. The air here was different, heavier, charged with an almost divine presence. At its base, half buried in moss, lay a flat stone slab. Strange runes pulsed faintly across its surface, forming a circular seal. Michael's breath caught. This is it. He approached slowly. His heart thundered in his chest, equal parts awe and anticipation. The moment he had read about, imagined countless times in his past life, was now real before his eyes. He knelt by the stone, brushing away moss and dirt until the runes were fully visible. At the center was a carved symbol, a hammer striking an anvil. The mark of Delora, the saint-ranked dwarven blacksmith. Just like the side story said. Michael placed his hand on the symbol. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ground trembled. The seal flared with blinding light, runes unraveling like threads. The fog thickened, swirling violently, and the air vibrated with raw mana. A voice boomed inside his mind, deep and resonant. Legacy trial detected. Activating hidden quest, the blacksmith's legacy. Warning, failure will result in death. The stone cracked, splitting open as a staircase of light descended into the earth beneath the tree. Michael stared, his grip tightening on his sword. His pulse pounded with adrenaline. This is it, he whispered. The trial of the Drakron sword. With one final breath, he stepped forward into the light. The glowing staircase descended deeper than Michael expected. Each step pulsed faintly beneath his boots, as though the very stone carried veins of mana. The deeper he went, the thicker the air became, dense with the metallic tang of iron and the faint burn of fire. The echo of hammer strikes reverberated through the cavernous passage, steady and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of a forge that had never cooled. By the time he reached the final step, the staircase opened into a vast underground chamber. The ceiling was high enough to vanish into shadows, and the walls shimmered with embedded mana crystals, glowing blue and orange like molten embers. At the chamber's center stood a colossal anvil, cracked with age yet radiating authority. The floor bore intricate runic circles, weaving around each other like a blacksmith's chain links. Michael's breath caught. This wasn't just a dungeon, it was a legacy. The sound of hammering rang once more, yet no figure stood by the anvil. Instead, the system's familiar chime pierced the silence. Trial of worthiness initiated. 3 challenges await: strength, will, mastery, failure, death. Michael's hand instinctively tightened around his sword hilt. His heartbeat quickened, not from fear alone, but from the sheer weight of history pressing down on him. This is it, the trial of Delora. His voice echoed faintly in the chamber. The step toward the Drakron sword. The runes flared, and the floor shifted beneath his feet. Stone platforms rose like a battle arena, enclosing him in a circle of glowing steel. Sparks burst from the runes, and shapes began to emerge, a monstrous silhouettes hammered into existence by the Forge's will. The trial of strength had begun. Trial of strength. The first creature solidified into an iron wolf, its metallic fangs glinting in the rune light. Its movements were eerily smooth, each joint clicking as though oiled. Behind it, 3 more emerged, followed by hulking iron golems, each nearly twice Michael's height. Their bodies were crude but dense, forged from slabs of steel, their eyes glowing red with artificial malice. Michael drew his sword in one clean motion, mana surging into the blade. E-rank constructs. No, some of these are closer to D. Their defense will be tough, but their movements are rigid. If I strike precisely, I can dismantle them. The first wolf lunged. Michael sidestepped, mana flowing into his legs to sharpen his agility. He pivoted low, blade flashing upward. Steel screeched as his sword sliced into the wolf's joint, severing a metallic leg. Sparks erupted, the beast collapsing with a metallic whine. But the fight didn't pause. 2 more wolves leapt simultaneously. Michael twisted, embedding mana into his blade's edge, and struck in a horizontal arc. The strike rang like a bell, splitting one wolf in half. The second clipped his arm with its jaws' metal teeth scraping against his reinforced mana skin. He grimaced. TCH. That was close. Mana pulsed through his arm as he shoved the beast away, stabbing through its core with a precise thrust. The construct collapsed, fragments scattering across the rune floor. Then the golems advanced. Each step shook the arena, their fists as large as Michael's torso. He steadied his breathing, recalling the game mechanics from his past life. Golems are slow, but durable. Their weak points are the mana cores embedded in their chests. Strike true, or waste energy hacking at their armor. The first golem swung. Michael ducked beneath the massive fist, boots sliding across stone. He surged upward with a rising slash, mana bursting through his blade. The edge cut into the golem's chest, sparks flew, but the strike only gouged the armor. The core flickered faintly behind the crack. Not enough power. The second golem's fist barreled toward him. Michael crossed his blade with both hands, reinforcing it with mana, and braced. The impact rang like thunder, his knees nearly buckling under the pressure. Gritting his teeth, he redirected the force, sliding sideways, and stabbed again, this time channeling mana directly into the blade's tip. The strike pierced the weakened crack, shattering the glowing core. The golem froze, then collapsed into rubble. Michael exhaled sharply. His stamina was draining faster than expected, but his strikes were becoming cleaner, sharper. Each movement was calculated, a blend of instinct and remembered mechanics. He pivoted to the next golem, dodging another crushing strike, and unleashed a mana-infused thrust straight into its core. The construct collapsed instantly, but the arena trembled. The runes pulsed violently, and from the anvil's glow emerged the final challenger of strength, a bronze juggernaut. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, a massive armored giant wielding a 2-handed warhammer that gleamed like molten bronze. Its presence radiated raw pressure, closer to 8D+ ranked beast than anything Michael had faced so far. Michael's eyes narrowed. This is the real test. The juggernaut moved with surprising speed for its size, the hammer descending in a crushing arc. Michael rolled aside, the weapon slamming into the floor with an explosion of sparks. The shockwave alone forced him back several steps. Fast and strong, great. The juggernaut swung horizontally. Michael leapt over the sweep, twisting midair, and aimed a mana-charged slash at the creature's helmet. The strike sparked but bounced, its armor far too dense. Landing hard, Michael steadied his breath. The core, find the core. The juggernaut lunged again, hammer smashing downward. Michael sidestepped, focusing mana into his legs, and sprinted along its side. He slashed at its torso, and this time his blade dug deeper. Sparks showered, and for an instant he glimpsed a faint glow beneath the bronze plating. There! He poured mana into his sword, dashing forward as the juggernaut turned. Timing his movement with the giant's swing, he slid beneath the hammer's arc and thrust his blade into the glowing crack. The juggernaut roared, metal groaning like a dying beast. The core shattered, bronze plates collapsing in chunks. The giant fell to its knees, then crumbled entirely. Michael dropped to one knee, panting heavily. Sweat dripped down his brow. His stamina reserves were dangerously low, but his blade remained steady in his grip. Trial of strength passed. The arena dissolved into sparks. Michael found himself standing once again by the colossal anvil. But the forge was no longer silent. A low, rumbling voice echoed, neither hostile nor kind. Strength tested. Now, will. Trial of will. The chamber darkened. The glow of the runes vanished, replaced by shifting shadows. Michael blinked, and suddenly he was no longer in the forge. He stood in a dim room, one all too familiar, his old apartment back on Earth. The computer desk sat before him, the faint glow of the monitor casting shadows across the clutter. His heart clenched. This is... On the screen, his old game account flickered. He saw himself, hunched over, eyes hollow, hands trembling on the mouse. The memory of his death replayed. The silent collapse. No one there to notice, no one there to care. The screen warped, and the voices of old friends echoed. You wasted your life, Michael. You weren't good enough to stand among us. You'll always be weak. Michael gritted his teeth. His fists clenched. This isn't real. It's the trial. The shadows shifted again. Now he stood before Leon Lionheart, the protagonist of this world, laughing with his golden sword raised. Aurelia Miller smirked beside him, her crystal eyes gleaming with disdain. You don't belong here. You'll never reach us. The whispers grew louder, suffocating. Give up. Leave the sword. Power will consume you. Michael's breath came ragged, but his eyes hardened. He shouted into the void. No, I won't give up. Not this time. Not in this life. Mana surged from his body, a radiant pulse that shattered the illusions like glass. The voices silenced. The world dissolved back into the forge. Trial of will passed. Michael exhaled slowly, steadying himself. His chest felt lighter, as if the weight of 2 lives had been burned away. Then the forge shifted again. Trial of mastery. A phantom dwarf appeared by the anvil broad-shouldered, eyes glowing faintly, his form shimmering like smoke. His voice rumbled with pride and challenge. Strength alone breaks. Will alone falters. To wield my legacy, you must master both. Show me your harmony of blade and mana. The runes flared, and from them emerged a warrior forged. The rune knight construct rose, towering above him, its frame sculpted from enchanted steel. Glowing runes pulsed across its armor like veins of molten fire, and the greatsword it carried was twice the size of Michael's body. Every step it took echoed like a war drum, radiating pressure that tightened around his chest. Michael's jaw clenched. This is the real test. If I can't beat this, I don't deserve the Drakron sword. He reached into his inventory pouch and pulled out a small vial of shimmering red liquid, a strength burst potion he'd purchased before entering the dungeon. Without hesitation, he uncorked it and drank. The effect hit like fire racing through his veins. His muscles tightened, his vision sharpened, and his mana flared brighter. For the next 10 minutes, he was stronger, faster, sharper. The Rune Knight moved first. It blurred forward, its massive blade descending in a perfect arc aimed to cleave him in two. Michael braced and shouted, "I shield!" A translucent wall of crystalline ice burst into existence between them. The construct's great sword crashed into it, shattering the shield into glittering fragments. The force alone sent Michael skidding backward, boots carving lines into the stone floor. His arms trembled under the shockwave, but he was already moving. Sword slashed. His sword gleamed with compressed mana, and he lunged forward, releasing a crescent arc of energy that cut across the arena. The Rune Knight deflected it with a casual sweep of its blade, sparks scattering into the air. The construct countered, thrusting with inhuman precision. Michael twisted his body sideways, barely evading, and shouted. Shadow swap. His body flickered into shadow, vanishing from sight. A heartbeat later, He reappeared at the construct's flank, sword raised high. Mana surged through his blade as he unleashed another sword slash, striking against the knight's glowing runes. The blow landed, sparks spraying as steel met enchanted steel. A thin crack spread across one of the knight's chest runes. Good, damage confirmed. The rune knight retaliated instantly. Swinging its blade in a wide arc, Michael raised his sword to block, reinforcing it with mana. The impact shook his bones, forcing him to his knees. He gritted his teeth. I can't keep taking hits head-on. I need to push harder. Frost Forge. His sword shimmered with icy blue light, layers of frost coating its edge. Cold mist swirled around him, lowering the temperature of the arena. With a roar, he struck again, his frosted blade clashing against the knight's runes. This time, the strike bit deeper, frost creeping along the crack. The knight staggered, its movements briefly slowed by the encroaching ice. Michael seized the moment. He raised his free hand and shouted, "Ice bullet!" Dozens of sharp, crystalline shards of ice materialized in the air around him. With a flick of his wrist, they shot forward like arrows, peppering the rune knight. Some bounced harmlessly off its armor, but others found gaps, chipping away at its joints and runes. The knight let out a metallic roar and surged forward, its rune blade glowing with burning light. It swung in a brutal, downward arc too fast to dodge. Michael crossed his blade in front of him, pouring mana into his guard, but the strike smashed through his stance, forcing him to one knee. The ground cracked beneath him. His vision blurred, mana reserves rapidly draining. Damn it! The rune knight raised its sword again for a finishing blow. Michael clenched his teeth, his mind racing. If I keep this up, I'll burn out before I win. No, I have one card left. He focused on his second affinity. Space. Mana warped around him, the air distorting with faint ripples. His blade shimmered, icy blue merging with faint silver distortions. Space bent around the edge of his weapon, the frost sharpening into an otherworldly edge. Michael steadied his breathing. This would be everything, every drop of mana he had left. The rune knight descended, blade glowing with lethal power. Michael roared, mana erupting violently from his body. Spatial frost sever. He vanished in a flicker, reappearing behind the construct in a single step. His blade, glowing with fused ice and space, cleaved through the air in a flawless arc. The strike cut clean through the rune knight's chest. Space distorted violently along the cut, while frost exploded from within, spreading like veins of ice. For a heartbeat, the knight froze in place, its glowing runes flickering. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, its body split apart, cleaved perfectly in two. The halves collapsed onto the ground, shattering into sparks of fading mana. Michael dropped to one knee, his chest heaving. His vision dimmed, and his mana reserves screamed empty. He had burned through every ounce of energy, every drop of strength. The icy mist faded, the warped space calmed, and silence returned to the forge. Then the system's voice rang, final and absolute. Trial of mastery, passed. Michael collapsed onto his back, laughing breathlessly despite the ache in his body. He had done it. Against impossible odds, against exhaustion and fear, he had proven himself. The forge blazed with golden light. The phantom dwarf's voice echoed one last time. You have proven yourself, child of two worlds. My legacy is yours. The anvil flared, and from its core emerged a sword unlike any Michael had ever seen. Black silver steel, etched with faint dragon runes that pulsed like living veins. Its aura was immense, pressing against his body, threatening to crush him with sheer weight of power. Michael reached out, trembling. The moment his hand touched the hilt, the weapon's presence flooded his mind, ancient, commanding, hungry. His knees buckled, but he refused to release it. The chamber shook, and the system's chime resounded. Congratulations, host. You have obtained a divine weapon. Host has formed a contract with the Drakron sword. Michael's eyes widened as the sword pulsed in his grip. The contract had been forged, and with it, his path had irrevocably changed. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The familiar wooden scent of the inn's main hall washed over me, blending with the faint aroma of stew and freshly baked bread. Compared to the suffocating gloom of the dungeon, this place felt like a sanctuary. The lantern light glowed warm and steady, casting away shadows that clung to me even after leaving that forsaken place. Before I could even step further inside, a cheerful voice rang out. "Oh, Michael, where have you been the last 2 days?" I turned toward the source. The innkeeper's wife, a plump woman with bright brown eyes and a motherly smile that could soften stone. She dried her hands on an apron as she approached me with both concern and warmth. "It's already the 9th of March. You didn't show up yesterday either," she said, looking me up and down. "I was beginning to worry something had happened to you." Behind her, the innkeeper himself leaned against the counter, polishing a mug with a rag. He had the kind of weathered face that spoke of long years in the trade, his gray hair tied back into a stubby knot. He grunted when he saw me. Michael, don't forget, the academy entrance exam is on the 15th. Be prepared." His tone wasn't sharp, more like the practical reminder of a man who had seen many young hopefuls come and go. I let out a small laugh, rubbing the back of my neck. "Yeah, I know. Don't worry, I'm ready. I just had some things to do before the exam. Nothing to worry about." The wife studied me for another moment, as if deciding whether I was being truthful, then finally nodded. "Well, as long as you're safe. You look tired, though. Make sure you eat properly, all right?" "Of course," I said with a polite smile. After a bit more small talk, I excused myself and headed upstairs. My legs felt heavy as I climbed, and by the time I opened the door to my room, it was like dropping a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. The simple room greeted me. A small bed, a wooden wardrobe, a basin. Modest, but compared to the dungeon, this was luxury. I shut the door behind me, unfastened my cloak, and tossed it onto the chair. My shirt followed, damp with sweat. Time for a bath. Steam soon filled the small attached washroom, and I sank into the warm water with a sigh. The heat seeped into my bones, easing the soreness from fighting and swinging my blade for hours in that cursed place. By the time I stepped out 5 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, I felt like a new man. My reflection in the small mirror looked sharper too. Eyes more focused, posture straighter. It wasn't just the bath. It was progress. I sat down, stretched my hands, and finally gave the command. Status. Status window. Name, Michael Willson. Age, 15. Class, Magic Swordsman. Traits, Mana Manipulation. Rank, E. Affinity, Ice Space. STR, 101. STA, 112. AGI, 87. ENC, 79. INT, 107. Mana, 2,900/2,900. Unallocated stats, 20. SP, 15,660. Skills, 5. Arts, 1. Shop Creation Skill. I studied the glowing panel carefully, lips curling into a half smile. 20 unallocated stat points. Not bad at all, but stats weren't just numbers. They translated to raw ability. And right now, I needed balance. My STR and STA were solid, but my agility lagged behind, and in a fight speed was survival. After a moment of thought, I made my choice. Allocate 7 points into AGI, 8 into STR, and the last 5 into STA. The screen pulsed, numbers shifting. Status updated. STR 109. STA 117. AGI 94. ENC 79. INT 107. Mana 2,900/2,900. Unallocated stats 0. Not bad. Not bad at all. But then my gaze landed on the small note under rank. Dash. I clenched my fists. To rank up to a full E, I needed at least 125 in one stat. My STR and STA were close, but not quite there yet. Just a few more points. Guess that's another wall to break, I muttered. Still, compared to me who had first woken up in this world, I was stronger. Tangibly stronger. And as if in response to that thought, the system chimed in. Ding! Quest unlocked. Quest 1. Pass the entrance exam. 1.1 pass the first exam. Reward. +3 stats, plus 500 SP. 1.2 pass the second exam. Reward, plus 3 stats, plus 500 SP. 1.3 pass the third exam. Reward, plus 3 stats, plus 2 STR, plus 600 SP. 1.4 pass the final exam. Reward, plus 5 stats, plus 3 STR, plus 2 INT, plus 900 SP. Quest 2. Be the best. Result-based reward. Rank 9th to 5th. Reward, plus 5 stats, X1 blue skill. Rank 4th to 3rd. Reward, plus 10 stats, X1 purple skill. Rank 2nd. Reward, plus 15 stats, X2 purple skills, plus 5,000 SP. Rank 1st. Reward, plus 20 stats, X1 purple skill, X1 gold skill, plus 15,000 SP. Quest 3. Admitted to the Academy. 1.1 Become an official student of the Academy. Reward, plus 10 stats, plus 5,000 SP. 1.2 Assigned to Class A. Reward, plus 15 stats, plus 8,000 SP. The blue panels hovered in front of me like tantalizing bait. My chest tightened. These rewards, if I could actually pull this off, it would accelerate my growth massively. Blue, purple, gold skills. In the game, those have been rare treasures. And stats. Oh, the stats. They were basically the foundation of everything. Yeah, I whispered, smirking. This is it. This is my shot. But reality was a cruel teacher. To stand out in the exam, I needed more than stats and a few basic skills. I needed something that could make me different. Something that would give me an edge over not just ordinary candidates, but monsters in human skin. A weapon. A proper one. My gaze fell to the corner, where my current sword leaned against the wall. Functional, but nothing special. It wouldn't make heads turn, and in a fight against real elites, it might not even hold. I knew where the best option lay. The sword belonging to Leon Lionheart, the so-called protagonist. The blade that would shine brilliantly in the hands of the game's chosen hero. But that path was closed. I couldn't touch it not without risking everything. So what then? I leaned back on the bed, closing my eyes, dredging through the half-buried memories of my past life. Game lore, side quests, hidden developer notes. And then it came to me. Not the protagonist blade, but another. The second divine weapon. The Drakron sword. The details flickered in my mind like a half-forgotten story. It had been mentioned only once, in an obscure side story, practically hidden from normal players. Most dismissed it as flavor text. But I remembered. Forged nearly 3 millennia ago by the dwarf blacksmith Delora, whose rank had been said to reach Saint Plus. He had used dragon martial fragments and even a shard of divinity itself. But the sword was too dangerous. It could possess its wielder if they weren't strong enough. So Delora sealed it away, burying it beneath the roots of an ancient tree in the Black Forest. It was locked behind a trial, with a stone seal marked by a symbol. Press the symbol, and the door to the hidden chamber would open. And there, waiting, would be the sword. Drakron's sword. I whispered, eyes gleaming. In the game, no one ever retrieved it. It had remained a legend, a whisper. But now I had a chance. The system flickered, as if acknowledging my thought. Item detected, Drakron's sword. Rank sealed. My breath caught. So it was real. The weapon was out there, waiting, and I would claim it. The forest air was calm, broken only by the whisper of leaves rustling above. Michael leaned against the trunk of an old oak, its shade shielding him from the harsh afternoon sun. His chest rose and fell slowly, his breathing still ragged from the ordeal. Across his lap lay the sword that had nearly killed him the moment he'd claimed it. The Drakron sword. Its obsidian black blade shimmered faintly, lines of crimson mana glowing across the surface like veins. The hilt was wrapped in worn dragon hide, warm to the touch, almost as if alive. Its weight was perfect in his hand, too perfect, unnaturally balanced. Michael swallowed. It's beautiful and terrifying. He had been staring at it for nearly an hour, unable to shake the lingering dread from when he first grasped its power. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. This was a divine weapon, One of the rarest artifacts in existence, sealed, corrupted, and yet undeniably potent. Finally, with a hesitant breath, he placed his palm on the blade and pushed mana into it. The reaction was immediate. The crimson veins flared, pulsing like a living heart. A surge of icy coldness stabbed into his veins, racing up his arm, piercing into his mind. His vision blurred, and a voice, not words, but an overwhelming will, pressed against his consciousness. It was deep, commanding, suffocating. Submit. His body stiffened as shadows coiled around his arm, seeping up toward his chest. His heartbeat thundered. The blade wasn't just reacting, it was trying to take him. His thoughts frayed, fragments of alien whispers filling his skull. Then, Drakran's sword is corrupting the host. Error detected. Error code. XXX122XX. System forcefully interfering with the sword. System blocked the Drakran's sword spirit. Drakran's sword neutralized. The shadows shattered like broken glass, retreating instantly. The crimson glow dimmed, leaving only the faint glimmer of runes etched into the blade. Michael collapsed back against the tree, drenched in cold sweat, gasping for air. His hand trembled violently as he pulled it away from the hilt. "Damn," he whispered hoarsely. It wasn't just cursed. It has a will. The sword had tried to seize him completely. If not for the system, his mysterious second chance, he would have become a hollow puppet for whatever spirit resided within this weapon. The thought alone twisted his gut, but the system had intervened. It had neutralized the sword's spirit, blocking it from taking hold. Relief washed over him in waves. He looked down at the Drakran's sword again, still gleaming faintly in the light. Dangerous, yes, but as now. "Looks like you're mine," he muttered, though a shiver followed his words. "For better or worse. Now that I have sword, I should do training here in the forest." 2 days later, time slipped by quietly. Michael spent the next 2 days in silence near the forest's edge, away from prying eyes. He trained lightly, restoring his strength, practicing his mana control, and meditating to stabilize the cracks that battle had left in his core. Every so often, he glanced at the Drakran sword. He kept it sheathed, refusing to feed it mana again. Not yet. He wasn't ready. But the knowledge lingered in the back of his mind. This was a weapon that could make him or break him. A blade forged from dragon marrow and god fragments, sealed by a saint-ranked dwarf blacksmith, and now bound to him by fate. On the evening of the second day, he packed his belongings. His body was restored, his spirit sharpened. The academy entrance exam was only 1 day away, and so he left the Black Forest behind. Ironshade Town, train station. The station bustled with noise, a crossroads of adventurers, merchants, and ordinary townsfolk. Steam and mana exhaust hissed from the great engines of the magic trains, sleek carriages of metal and crystal designed to run along enchanted rails. Michael walked through the crowd calmly, his cloak concealing the Drakran's sword strapped across his back. He had no intention of drawing attention to himself. Not here. Not yet. He bought his ticket for Atlan City, East Block. The clerk handed it to him without much fuss. Carriage 3, seat number 35. Perfect. A single seat near the window, away from the noise. Michael smirked faintly. He wasn't making the same mistake twice. No chance encounter with a certain sharp-tongued alchemist this time. Or so he thought. The train whistled sharply before gliding forward, the enchanted wheels humming as mana conduits along the tracks lit up. Michael settled into his seat, resting against the window as the scenery began to blur past forests, giving way to open plains, plains giving way to distant cities, each connected by shimmering veins of arcane rail. He let his thoughts wander as the rhythm of the train carried him forward. Soon, he would step into Atlan City. Soon, he would see faces he recognized from the game. Leon Lionheart, the destined protagonist. Aiden, the fiery warrior. Lyra, the prodigious mage. And so many others. He knew their strengths, their fates, their potential. He knew the paths they were destined to walk. But this wasn't a game anymore. One wrong move, and he could die. His hand brushed the hilt of the Dracaran sword beneath his cloak. He had power now, but power was meaningless without control. 30 minutes later, the train slowed at the next stop. New passengers boarded, voices filling the carriage for a brief moment before the doors slid shut again. Michael barely paid attention until someone sat down across from him. Seat 36. He glanced up casually, only for his eyes to widen slightly. Aurelia Miller. Her presence was unmistakable. Light blue hair tied neatly, eyes like polished crystal, posture graceful yet radiating pride. Even here, in a simple traveling cloak, she carried herself like nobility. Michael quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. The last thing he needed was another awkward conversation. But Aurelia noticed him. Of course she did. Her gaze lingered on him for several seconds before she finally spoke. "So, you're also heading to the Arcade Academy entrance exam." Her tone was flat, not curious, more like an observation than a question. Michael exhaled softly. "Yes, I am." Aurelia tilted her head slightly, studying him as though measuring his worth. After a moment, her lips curved into a faint smirk. "Maybe you'll reach Class D, if you're strong enough." Her voice sharpened slightly, dismissive. "If not, you'll fail." Michael's brow twitched. The arrogance in her words wasn't unexpected. This was Aurelia Miller. After all, the genius alchemist with a hidden warlock class and ties to one of the world's strongest guilds. But he didn't rise to her bait. Not this time. He simply leaned back in his seat and replied evenly, "We'll see." Her smirk faded into indifference. She turned her gaze out the window, clearly uninterested in pursuing the conversation further. For the rest of the ride, silence settled between them. Arrival at Atlan City. 3 hours later, the skyline of Atlan City rose into view. Michael leaned forward slightly, unable to help his awe, even after all he'd seen. The city was massive, a sprawling metropolis of futuristic high-rises, glowing mage towers, floating platforms tethered by chains of light. Mana cars zipped through the streets below, while massive crystal arrays projected shimmering advertisements into the sky. The train slowed as it entered the East Block station. The doors hissed open, releasing a flood of passengers into the bustling city. Michael stood, slinging his pack over his shoulder. He spared one glance at Aurelia, already striding ahead, her head held high, eyes set firmly on her goal. She didn't look back. Good. He didn't want attention from her. Not yet. Instead, he stepped into the crowd, blending into the flow of bodies until the sound of the train faded behind him. By evening, Michael found a modest inn tucked into one of the quieter streets. He paid for a room, climbed the stairs, and set his belongings down. The Dracaran sword leaned against the wall, silent and ominous. Michael ignored it for now, pulling a chair toward the window instead. Outside, Atlan City pulsed with life. Lights shimmered from towering skyscrapers. Arcs of mana streaked across skybridges, and the distant glow of the academy towered over the skyline like a beacon. Tomorrow, the exams would begin. Tomorrow, he would step into the story he once only played. But this time, the outcome would be his to shape. Michael leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing with determination. Tomorrow, the real game begins. The morning sun shone bright over Ironshade Town, its golden rays casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. The train that carried Michael from the East Block screeched to a halt at the massive terminal overlooking Atlan City's Eastern District, a hub of magic tech wonders. Michael stepped off the train quietly, the familiar voice of the system still fresh in his ears after the turbulent encounter with the Dracaran sword. His body felt a little lighter now, as though the clash with the weapons had refined his resolve. Yet his eyes carried a sharpness focused, unyielding. Arcade Academy. He murmured under his breath as his gaze lifted toward the horizon. There it stood, a colossal fortress of knowledge and power, towering over the heart of Atlan City. Its spires reached high into the clouds, each etched with glowing runes that pulsed in rhythm with the mana flow beneath the city. Enormous crystalline towers surrounded the main campus, acting as both a defensive barrier and a source of mana supply. At the center of it all was the grand clock tower, whose radiant hands ticked with pure mana light, marking the beginning of a new academic year. For a moment, Michael stood in awe. Even though he had seen it countless times in his previous life, the cutscenes, the character introductions, the academy trials, it was something else to see it now with his own eyes. Living, breathing, real. The streets leading to the academy gates were packed with people. Thousands of candidates had gathered from across Denmark and beyond. Nobles in their families' crest, commoners in simple tunics, foreign exchange candidates wearing exotic garments. Michael slipped through the crowd, his hood drawn slightly over his head, preferring not to attract unnecessary attention. But even hidden within the masses, he could feel it, the atmosphere of ambition, rivalry, and fear. This is it, he thought. The academy arc begins here. Banners hung across the white stone gates of Arcade Academy, each representing one of the great families and guilds of Denmark. The Lionheart emblem of the roaring golden lion, the Stromfang crest of a lightning bolt, the Braveheart's crimson shield, the William family's blinding sun, symbols of power, wealth, and influence. Michael's eyes lingered on the William crest for a moment longer. Edric William, arrogant bastard. His family will make my path harder. As he approached the gates, he began recognizing familiar faces, those destined to be central figures in the game and the novel storyline. As looked towards the crowd to see the cast. First was Leon Lionheart, standing tall even among the crowd. His sandy golden hair caught the sunlight, and his steel-gray eyes radiated determination. His presence wasn't overwhelming, but it carried an undeniable weight, the aura of a protagonist. Even dressed plainly, there was nobility in his bearing. He's here, the Sword Saint, Michael thought. Illegitimate son or not, he's the one destined to carry the Lionheart name. Not far from Leon stood Aiden Stromfang, laughing heartily as sparks of lightning crackled faintly around his arms. His crimson hair was wild, his expression full of energy and reckless confidence. He was already surrounded by a few candidates, loudly declaring he would crush every test. Exactly as I remember him, Michael muttered with a faint smirk. Brash, but never backs down. Then there was Selena Valen, a striking figure among the crowd. Her long raven black hair flowed down her back, her movements elegant and composed. Clad in light combat robes accented with silver, her dark amethyst eyes gave off the serene but chilling aura of a reaper. Nobles bowed their heads slightly as she passed. The Princess of Denmark herself, one of the most dangerous assets of this academy, Michael thought. Further ahead, he spotted Alara Moonshade, her emerald hair shimmering under the light, her delicate elven features captivating everyone around her. She was guarded by a pair of elven knights, but her curious gaze wandered across the academy's architecture like a child marveling at something new. And then, in the middle of the stairs leading up to the gates, Aurelia Miller. Her light blue hair danced in the wind, her expression calm but commanding. The daughter of Martin Miller looked every bit the noble heiress, already surrounded by a small cluster of noble-born candidates who treated her with reverence. Her clear, crystal eyes swept across the crowd, pausing for a brief moment on Michael. Their gazes met for only an instant before she turned away with disinterest. Michael sighed. So much for avoiding her. One by one, the supporting cast of the Academy arc made their appearances. Lyra Braveheart, Chris Blackthorne, Maria Frostheart, all of them were here. The main story was assembling before his eyes. Suddenly, the murmuring crowd suddenly went silent. From atop the grand staircase, a man cloaked in crimson robes appeared, his very presence suffocating. His long silver hair framed a stern face, and his piercing scarlet eyes scanned the sea of candidates with chilling precision. Harold Crimson, principal of Arcade Academy. His voice thundered across the plaza, amplified by mana. Welcome, candidates, to Arcade Academy. Today, you stand before the gates of destiny. But remember this, his gaze sharpened, and the air itself seemed to thrum under his authority. Not all of you are worthy to step inside. Michael felt his knees weaken slightly as the principal's presence grew heavier. It wasn't killing intent, but pure spiritual pressure from the principal as direct assault on our willpower. This is it, the endurance trial, Michael realized, gritting his teeth. Harold Crimson raised his hand. A crimson aura expanded outward, engulfing the entire plaza. Endure or be crushed. Only the strong may take their first step. The pressure slammed down like a mountain. Candidates cried out, some collapsing instantly as their faces struck the stone. F and G ranks were flattened within seconds, unconscious or trembling violently. Even E ranks shook as though their bones would snap under the force. Michael bent his knees slightly, trying to ground himself. His vision blurred, his heartbeat thundered, and sweat trickled down his forehead. Stay calm. You know this trial. Hold on. Around him, the chaos unfolded. Leon Lionheart gritted his teeth, his sword calluses glowing faintly as he steadied himself. His body trembled but refused to bow. Aiden Stromfong roared defiantly, lightning sparking violently across his skin as he fought back against the weight. Selena Valen stood poised, her expression unshaken, though Michael noticed her clenched fists beneath her sleeves. Aurelia Miller's body swayed, her blue hair whipping in the invisible storm, but her eyes remained calm and cold. Michael's body screamed at him to kneel. His muscles burned, his mana core trembled under the crushing force. I can't draw too much attention, but I can't fall either. He activated mana manipulation, channeling his reserves evenly across his body to distribute the strain. It was subtle as most wouldn't even notice it, but it stabilized his stance. Minutes passed. Candidates dropped one after another. From thousands, only a few hundred remained standing. Michael's vision darkened at the edges, but he clenched his jaw, forcing himself to endure. This is nothing, he whispered, though blood ran from his lip. Finally, Harold Crimson raised his hand, and the crushing aura dissipated like mist. Gasps and cries of relief spread across the survivors. The principal's gaze swept over them with measured approval. Good. You may enter. The rest are dismissed. The crushing weight of Harold Crimson's spiritual pressure faded like a dissipating storm. For a long moment, silence reigned over the plaza, broken only by the ragged gasps of candidates who had survived. The ground was littered with the unconscious students. Dozens of bodies sprawled out, eyes rolled back, mouths foaming. Attendants from the academy moved swiftly, lifting the fallen with practiced efficiency. Michael remained on one knee, chest heaving, his hands trembling against the stone tiles. His vision swam, but he forced his breathing into rhythm. Steady, stay calm. Don't let anyone see weakness. Around him, the survivors were few compared to the sea of candidates that had initially gathered. From thousands, only a few hundred remained standing. The difference was stark, as a visible line had been drawn between the ambitious and the capable. Leon Lionheart stood in the front row, his jaw tight, but eyes blazing with determination. Even though his clothes clung with sweat, his back remained straight, the image of a steadfast warrior. Not far from him, Aiden Stromfong laughed breathlessly, sparks still dancing across his fingertips. Huh, is that all? I was just warming up, he barked, though his knees betrayed the slightest quiver. Selena Valen brushed a strand of dark hair from her face, her expression composed, though Michael noticed her pale knuckles where her fists had clenched beneath her sleeves. She had endured without a sound, just like a shadow that refused to be shaken. Aurelia Miller was different. She had endured too. Her posture elegant, even under pressure, but her gaze had shifted. She wasn't merely proud anymore, as her sharp blue eyes flickered with curiosity. For the briefest instant, as Michael straightened, he caught her looking at him. Noticing that he had withstood the principal's aura, someone she clearly believed was beneath her. Their eyes met. Michael immediately broke the contact, pretending to wipe blood from the corner of his mouth. Great. Just what I needed. Now she's interested. She'll be watching me more closely from now on. Then I leaned back and took a deep breath. These were characters I guided, fought beside, died for, or with again and again. Every name in this room once lived in my screen, lines of code and story flags. And now they're here, breathing, moving real. He could feel the pulse in his neck, the buzz in his fingertips, like stepping into a myth you memorized, only to discover it breathing beside you. He wanted to speak to them, to shake their hands, to scream, "I know you." But instead, he buried that excitement deep inside and forced a casual yawn. This is too much. I'm one badly timed word away from combusting. Calm down, calm down. The principal's crimson cloak swayed as he looked down upon them all. His gaze was like a blade, cutting through each survivor, weighing them as though he could see straight into their souls. "Good," Harold Crimson said at last, his voice heavy with approval. "Those who remain standing are worthy to take their first step into Arcade Academy." The words carried like a decree. Relief swept through the survivors. Some cheered weakly, others collapsed outright in tears of exhaustion. But Michael only clenched his fist tightly, forcing himself to stand upright. First step taken. But this is only the beginning. From the edges of the plaza, faculty members emerged, black-robed instructors, knights in silver armor, and mages carrying mana scrolls. They moved with practiced efficiency, separating the unconscious from the survivors, dividing the candidates into neat lines. Michael takes his first step into Arcade Academy. Ahead lies the written exam, and the clash of intellects, where his knowledge of the game will give him an unexpected edge. As the gates closed behind them, the survivors were ushered into a vast marble courtyard. The air was fresher inside, imbued with faint mana that cleared the fog from weary minds. The sound of fountains and birdsong contrasted sharply with the crushing silence that had filled the plaza minutes ago. For a moment, the survivors were simply still. Many slumped on benches lining the courtyard, drinking from mana water fountains that seemed to refill endlessly. Others leaned against walls, too proud to show weakness but too shaken to stand tall. And then, inevitably, the whispers began. "Did you see him? The boy with the lion insignia. He stood like it was nothing. That must be Leon Lionheart. But isn't he illegitimate? Illegitimate or not, he's still a Lionheart. Blood like that isn't so easily dismissed." Michael's gaze flickered toward Leon, who bore the whispers with a calm, resolute face. He neither acknowledged them nor denied them. Another cluster of whispers rose. "What about Aurelia Miller? Did you see her composure? Of course. She's the daughter of Martin Miller. No surprise she's flawless. She didn't even flinch, unlike the rest of us." Aurelia allowed the whispers to flow around her like the tide, her expression unreadable. But Michael noticed the faint upward tilt of her chin. She was aware, and she welcomed their awe. Then, unexpectedly, another thread of gossip emerged. "But who was that boy in the middle ranks? The one with white hair and blue, who stayed standing at the end?" "Yeah, I swear I saw him trembling, but he didn't fall. And when the pressure lifted, he stood up like nothing happened. I've never seen him before. Is he a noble?" "Doubt it. Probably a commoner." Michael didn't react outwardly, but inside, he tightened his grip. So they noticed after all. I thought I'd blended in well enough. He wasn't drawing as much attention as Leon or Aurelia, but a seed had been planted. People had noticed his endurance. And in an academy where perception mattered almost as much as strength, that seed could grow into opportunity or suspicion. Clusters of noble-born candidates naturally gravitated toward one another, forming circles of hushed voices. Michael heard snatches of conversation as he passed. Some nobles sneered at the unconscious commoners being carried away. Others whispered about which families had sent heirs this year. A few were already speculating on alliances whose children would lead and whose would follow. Michael caught sight of Edric William, the smug third son of the country's top family. Even in exhaustion, he carried himself with arrogance, barking at attendants as though they were servants. Beside him, his lackey Rinbellin laughed too loudly at every word, hoping to curry favor. Michael looked away quickly. Those two will become trouble, just like in a game. Finding an empty corner of the courtyard, Michael leaned against a stone pillar. He kept his head slightly bowed, forcing his breathing into calm rhythm. From here, he could observe without being noticed too much. Around him, destinies were beginning to intertwine. Leon, Aiden, Selena, Aurelia, Lyra, Maria, Chris, all future key figures of the Academy arc. They were drawing eyes, shaping impressions, becoming the center of gravity in this gathering. And Michael was the anomaly. I wasn't supposed to be here. In the game, this moment belonged to them. But now I've stepped into their world, changed the flow. Even small choices ripple outward. If I play this wrong, the story could collapse, or worse, turn against me. He flexed his hand, feeling the faint thrum of the sealed Dracrin sword in his storage. That's why I need to be careful. Blend when I must, strike when the time is right. No unnecessary trouble, but no wasted opportunities either. I will not just survive here. I will carve my place among them. A loud clap echoed across the courtyard. Vice Principal Sophia Emberhart had stepped onto the raised dais. She was tall and elegant, her long crimson hair flowing behind her like a banner. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the murmurs at once. "Survivors of the endurance trial," she said, "you have proven your willpower and spirit. But endurance alone does not make a student of Arcade Academy. The next stage will measure your intellect, your ability to think, strategize, and apply knowledge under pressure." Murmurs rippled. Some looked nervous, others relieved. Michael straightened, recalling the outline of the entrance exams from his past life knowledge. The written exam comes next: strategy, tactics, monster ecology, battlefield judgment. Not too difficult, but dangerous if underestimated. Nobles will rely on their tutors. Commoners will struggle. I'll need to score high enough to stand out, but not so high that I draw too much suspicion. Sophia's gaze swept the crowd. "You will have 1 hour to complete the written assessment. Follow the instructors to the examination hall." The courtyard stirred to life once again, candidates lining up as attendants directed them. Michael pushed himself off the pillar, slipping into the flow of survivors. His heart beat steadily fast, but not with fear, but with anticipation. The first step had been survival. The second would be to prove his mind. The marble courtyard emptied slowly, footsteps echoing against the ancient stone walls as the candidates were herded deeper into the academy complex. Michael followed quietly in the middle ranks, head tilted slightly down so he wouldn't stand out. Still, his eyes scanned everything. The carved spires, the flowing mana lamps lining the halls, the faint hum of enchantments etched into the very architecture. Arcade Academy wasn't merely a school, it was a fortress of knowledge, a citadel of power. Even now, stepping inside, Michael felt the weight of history pressing in on him. In the game, this was always portrayed as a cutscene, a text box describing the Grand Academy halls. But standing here, it's alive. The air tastes of mana. The walls whisper with runes. And I'm not just a player watching, I'm walking the path myself. The candidates were led into a grand hall with high ceilings supported by white pillars. Rows of desks were laid out across the floor, each neatly separated from the others by glowing mana partitions to prevent cheating. On the far side stood a team of instructors, each holding thick stacks of examination scrolls. "Take your seats," one instructor barked. The crowd dispersed quickly. Michael chose a desk near the middle, not too far forward, not too far back. Visibility matters. If I sit at the front, I draw too much attention. At the back, I look suspicious. Middle is safe. As he sat down, he glanced around. Leon Lionheart sat near the front, posture straight, eyes calm, like a soldier awaiting orders. Aurelia Miller, of course, was on the left wing, her expression poised and indifferent. Aiden Stromfong was restless even in his seat, tapping his fingers impatiently against the desk as if he wanted to fight rather than write. Selena Valen, the Princess of Denmard, sat with perfect composure, quill poised already in her hand though the exam hadn't even begun. Michael caught himself scanning them like a gamer checking the party screen. The main cast, all gathered, each in their rightful position. And me, the ghost who shouldn't exist here. The head instructor, Professor Adam Beckett, stepped forward. A short man with a sharp goatee and hawk-like eyes, he exuded the aura of strictness. With a flick of his hand, stacks of exam scrolls floated into the air, carried by mana currents. "Written trial begins now," he announced. 1 hour. No communication. No external aids. The scrolls will record your answers in real time. Cheating will result in immediate disqualification. The scrolls landed neatly on each desk, along with a quill that glowed faintly with enchantment. Michael unrolled his, scanning the first set of questions. Written exam questions. 1. Describe the primary weaknesses of a lesser wyvern and propose 3 tactical methods of exploiting them. 2. When facing a group of goblins with a shaman leader, which targets should be prioritized first? Explain your reasoning. 3. The proper rune sequence to stabilize a classy mana core during overload is? 4. In a party of 5, what is the most effective formation when engaging an armored troll in confined terrain? 5. Bonus question. Hypothetical scenario. You are tasked to defend a village from a beast tide of 200 monsters, but reinforcements will not arrive for 3 hours. Outline your defensive strategy. Michael felt his lips twitch. Exactly as I remember. They didn't change a thing. For most candidates, these were crushing. Nobles might breeze through the theoretical runes and monster studies thanks to private tutors, while commoners would flounder. The bonus scenario was meant to separate the extraordinary from the competent. But for Michael, it was déjà vu. He had studied these very answers once, years ago, when the game threw these trials as knowledge checks to test the player's preparation. He remembered the optimal strategies, the developer-approved answers, the hidden scoring system that awarded more points for tactical creativity. The challenge isn't answering. The challenge is how much to reveal. Too high, and I'll shine unnaturally bright. Too low, and I'll look incompetent. I need to hit the sweet spot, competent enough to stand out from the common rabble, but not enough to overshadow the main cast. His quill began to move. For the wyvern weakness, he detailed the soft underbelly, sensitivity of the wings, and poor maneuverability in confined airspace. He proposed tactics involving shield lines, baiting dives, and grounding strikes as efficient, but not overly advanced. For the goblin shaman scenario, he wrote swiftly. Always neutralize the shaman first to disrupt magical coordination, then collapse the goblin formation. Straightforward, expected. The rune stabilization? He wrote the exact sequence. Solven, Atrix, Dorma, the bare minimum to get full credit, without adding the more obscure sequences he knew. The troll formation? He outlined the standard triangular spearhead tank front, flanks for DPS, healer rear. Clean, effective, but nothing revolutionary. And then, the bonus question. This is where the smart ones will either rise or fall. A defensive scenario against impossible odds. He considered the game solution. It had always been to construct barriers, funnel the tide into choke points, set traps by time. But in the game, creativity earned extra narrative rewards. What if I add a layer? Something believable, but clever enough to show I think beyond basics. He wrote, to defend a village from 200 monsters, immediate evacuation of non-combatants is essential. Utilize natural terrain to funnel enemies into choke points. Establish layered barricades at streets, reinforced by fire traps. Assign ranged units to rooftops for overhead cover. If many users are present, prepare rotational spellcasting to maximize endurance. Importantly, morale must be preserved. Strategic retreats to secondary barricades will delay enemy advance without shattering formation. Time is the weapon. Survival until reinforcements arrive is the victory condition. He stopped there, quill hovering. He could have added an advanced contingency, using sacrificial bait squads or creating mana resonance explosives. But that would scream too much foreknowledge. So instead, he left it at a level where a bright commoner could reasonably have thought it through. The halls. The scratching of quills filled the hall. Some candidates sweated profusely, others chewed on their lips. Michael's eyes flicked occasionally to the others. Leon wrote calmly, unhurried. Aiden looked frustrated, chewing the end of his quill before scribbling something sloppy. Aurelia, elegant as ever, moved with precise strokes, her handwriting immaculate. Selena's face was composed, but her pace suggested thorough detail, royal training, and strategy. Michael allowed himself a faint smile. The cast is performing just as expected. After what felt like moments, Professor Beckett's voice cut through the silence. Time. Scrolls down. The scrolls rolled themselves up and floated into the air, drifting toward the instructors. A wave of tension released across the hall as students exhaled, some collapsing in relief, others frowning, knowing they had failed. As the candidates exited into the sunlight, chatter resumed. Some bragged about their answers. Others groaned about the rune sequence question. Michael overheard snippets. I blanked on the Wyvern one. The troll formation. I knew it was wrong halfway through. That bonus scenario was brutal. Who thinks of defending a village against 200 monsters? And then, faintly, his name again. The black-haired boy in the middle. He finished quickly, didn't he? Yeah, he didn't look panicked at all. Strange. He doesn't seem like a noble, but... Michael exhaled through his nose, deliberately not reacting. Good. Noticed, but not spotlighted. Exactly where I want to be. Sophia Emberheart appeared once more, her crimson presence silencing the courtyard. You have proven both your endurance and your knowledge, she declared. But strength of will and mind must be matched by strength of body. The next stage, the combat trial, will separate pretenders from true candidates. Prepare yourselves. A ripple of anticipation spread. This was the test many had been waiting for. Michael clenched his fists slightly. Combat. This is where I can finally show enough skill to secure my place. Swordsmanship, magic tactics. I'll have to play this one carefully. Not too weak, not too strong. But inside, another voice whispered. And maybe, just maybe, I'll finally get it cut loose. The arena still hummed with the lingering tension of the trial. Dust floated in the air like motes of memory, shimmering faintly under the enchanted lights that lined the Colosseum ceiling. Students whispered in hushed tones, the crowd of candidates buzzing with disbelief at the scene they had just witnessed. Michael Willson lay unconscious on the arena floor, his chest rising and falling, sword clutched loosely in his hand. His duel with Instructor Alastair had ended with him collapsing, not from defeat, but from mana exhaustion, after pushing himself beyond what anyone had expected. And from among the many who had witnessed, two pairs of eyes in particular could not look away. Leon Lionheart's POV. Leon's grip tightened around the hilt of his training sword, knuckles pale from the pressure. He had watched the entire fight with unwavering attention, and what he saw left him both unsettled and invigorated. That boy, Michael, he fought like someone who'd already lived through countless battles. Leon was no stranger to combat. His training as a Lionheart, even as the illegitimate son, had drilled discipline into him since childhood. The Lionheart sword style was etched into his bones, sharp, disciplined strikes infused with fire's ferocity. He could already use 2 of the 6 recognized forms, each capable of overwhelming most F and E rank opponents. Yet when he compared his own swordsmanship to Michael's, it was different. Michael's movements weren't flamboyant or polished with aristocratic flair. They were clean, stripped of excess, as if each swing of his blade had been forged through necessity, through survival, rather than for performance. He replayed in his mind the moment Michael unleashed that final strike, his blade carving through the air with an edge so precise it seemed to split the very arena's atmosphere. The resonance of ice, shadow, and something Leon couldn't quite name had clung to that attack. And then there was Michael's will. He didn't back down. Even when his body trembled, even when his mana drained, he pressed forward. Leon exhaled, shaking his head. He felt something stir in his chest, not resentment, but the heat of competition. He's no ordinary candidate. If I want to prove myself, I'll need to surpass him. Otherwise, I'll always be chasing behind. Leon glanced once more at Michael's unconscious form being lifted from the arena by attendants, then allowed a faint smile to curve his lips. Good. This exam just became far more interesting. Aurelia Miller's POV. Aurelia crossed her arms tightly, her light blue hair cascading like a waterfall over her shoulders. Her crystal-clear eyes had been fixated on the duel from start to finish, though she refused to admit it even to herself, how much it unsettled her. At first, she had dismissed Michael Willson entirely, a commoner from nowhere with no known family background, daring to enter Arcade Academy. She had pegged him as someone who would crumble the moment true pressure was applied. But instead, he had fought against Alastair Graythorne, the Academy's sword instructor, a man who had reduced countless arrogant nobles to trembling wrecks during this very trial, and Michael had endured. More than endured, he had forced Alastair to acknowledge him. Her gaze narrowed. That technique at the end, she had felt the temperature plummet, frost swirling around Michael's blade. And then there had been something else, a strange ripple that distorted space itself, so subtle that most students might not have noticed. But she had. Her instincts screamed danger. Aurelia was proud, the only daughter of Martin Miller, guild leader of Asterhall, one of the strongest hunters alive. She had been raised to look down on those below her. Yet something about Michael unsettled her arrogance, forcing her to see him not as an insect to crush, but as a rival. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Who exactly are you, Michael Willson?" she muttered under her breath. And then, as attendants carried his unconscious body away, she caught herself staring far longer than she should have. Annoyed at her own curiosity, she flicked her gaze aside with a huff. Vice Principal Sophia Emberhart's POV. High above, in the elevated seats reserved for staff and dignitaries, Vice Principal Sophia Emberhart leaned forward, her crimson robes fluttering slightly with the enchantments that warded the arena. Her keen emerald eyes hadn't missed a single detail of Michael's performance. He concealed it well, she murmured to herself, her tone thoughtful. Beside her, Principal Harold Crimson sat with a neutral, almost disinterested expression, though Sophia knew better. The principal rarely revealed his thoughts so easily. But Sophia, she was impressed. Michael Willson had shown remarkable mana efficiency for someone his age. His swordsmanship wasn't textbook, but it was undeniably effective, a blend of raw pragmatism and instinct that spoke of unorthodox training. More than that, there had been something dangerous, something he deliberately suppressed. For a moment, she thought she had sensed the faintest trace of space affinity, a power so rare it bordered on mythical. If her suspicion was correct, and this boy was hiding such a gift, then his future would be very different from the others. A small smile curved her lips. Interesting. She stood, her voice ringing out across the arena, cutting through the crowd's murmurs like a blade. The third trial has concluded, she declared, her voice echoing with authority. Those who have endured until now have proven themselves worthy of consideration. Tomorrow, the final trial shall be held. Until then, you are to rest in the common hall. Prepare yourselves, for only the strongest will endure what awaits. The candidates stirred, whispers breaking out. The words final trial carried weight. Everyone knew that meant something beyond ordinary combat. As the crowd dispersed, Sophia's gaze lingered once more on the boy being carried from the field. Michael Willson, you've hidden something, and I'll be watching you closely. Infirmare, hospital within the academy. When Michael finally opened his eyes, it was to the faint glow of runes etched into the walls above him. The sterile, clean scent of herbs and mana-infused ointments hung in the air. He blinked, realizing he was lying on a soft bed, his body wrapped in faint warmth. The infirmare, the academy's medical wing. His body felt heavy, though the pain from before had dulled into a faint ache. More importantly, when he stretched his senses inward, he found his mana reserves fully restored. The door creaked open. A young nurse stepped inside, her white uniform glowing faintly from embedded healing charms. She smiled when she saw him awake. "Ah, you've come too. Good. You gave us quite a scare." Michael sat up slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "How long?" "You collapsed during the trial," she explained, walking over to check the runes etched into the crystal tablet beside his bed. Mana exhaustion. Severe, but nothing we couldn't handle. Academy-grade potions and a day's rest did the trick. Michael exhaled. So he had pushed himself to the brink, after all. The nurse gave him a knowing look. You should be proud. Even the staff couldn't stop talking about your performance. You lasted longer against Instructor Graythorn than most nobles from prestigious families. He remained quiet at that, but inside his thoughts churned. The system notification before I passed out. He remembered the faint chime, the blurred text. Something about a hidden recognition. But exhaustion had claimed him before he could read it fully. The nurse continued, her voice soft. After you collapsed, the vice principal herself stepped forward. She announced that the final trial will be tomorrow. Tonight, you and the other candidates are to rest in the common hall. Michael nodded slowly. I see. Don't overdo it again, she warned before smiling lightly. But whatever you did out there, it's clear you've made an impression. Just remember that the final trial will be even harsher. When she left, the room grew quiet once more. Michael stared at his hands, flexing them slowly. His grip tightened as his thoughts sharpened. The survival trial. An artificial island. 3 days of endurance. He rose from the bed, gathering his things, and by evening, attendants escorted him to the common hall, where the remaining candidates were gathered. The common hall was abuzz with murmurs as Michael entered. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, some admiring, some jealous, others openly hostile. His performance in the arena had elevated him from obscurity to notoriety in the span of a single duel. Michael ignored the stares, claiming his bed near the corner. He lay down, hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts weren't on the whispers or the stares. They were on tomorrow. The special exam. An artificial island. 3 days of survival. This is where the real test begins. His eyes slowly drifted shut, though his resolve only hardened. Whatever awaited him, he would face it. The stage for the final trial was set. The morning sun rose over Atlan City, casting golden rays upon the colossal Colosseum arena. Its towering walls and engraved runes glimmered faintly as thousands of citizens gathered outside to witness the grand event. For the candidates inside, this was the most nerve-wracking moment yet. The previous 3 trials had already weeded out more than half the hopefuls. Now, only the strong and determined remained. Michael stood among the crowd of students, arms crossed, his hood pulled slightly forward. Around him, chatter filled the air, voices of excitement, fear, and bravado. Some clenched their fists, others muttered prayers, and a few simply smirked as though victory was already theirs. 3 days. Michael muttered under his breath. He already knew what was coming. This was not just another trial. It was the dividing line that would determine who had the qualifications to even dream of the Supreme Hall and who would fade into obscurity. The arena doors swung open, and silence descended upon the candidates. A ripple of oppressive mana spread across the space as Vice Principal Sophia Emberheart entered, her fiery crimson hair flowing behind her like a burning banner. She was a woman whose beauty was rivaled only by her authority, and with a single gaze she could quiet hundreds. Her voice echoed, carried by a subtle spell so that every corner of the Colosseum could hear. Congratulations to those who have passed the first 3 trials. But do not grow complacent. What comes next will test not only your strength, but your resolve, your adaptability, and your instincts to survive. This is the survival trial. The tension rose instantly, whispers buzzing as students glanced at one another. Sophia continued, pacing slowly across the center stage. You will be transported to a remote island created solely for this exam. Within its boundaries roam monsters ranging from rank F to rank D. Each kill you make will be recorded and rewarded with points. With a flick of her wrist, glowing symbols appeared in the air. F-rank Beast, 50 points. E-rank Beast, 100 points. D-rank Beast, 500 points. There are only 20 D-rank monsters across the island. Choose your hunts wisely. And remember, these points are everything. Rankings will be updated in real time. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Michael narrowed his eyes, exactly as in the game. The strongest would clash over the D-rank beasts, and alliances will form and break apart in pursuit of them. Sophia raised her hand, silencing the noise. Her next words carried a sharper edge. One more rule. Combat between candidates is not forbidden. If you believe you can overpower your opponent, then claim their prey, their resources, or even their lives, if you dare. But remember, death within the trial means elimination, nothing more. The revival wards will return you safely to the Colosseum. Choose your battles carefully. A heavy silence followed. Everyone understood what that meant. It wasn't just about monsters anymore. It was about survival against each other. Then, in a smooth gesture, Sophia snapped her fingers. Out of thin air, glowing light coalesced around every candidate's wrist. When it faded, each of them wore a sleek black smartwatch, humming faintly with mana. "This device," she explained, "is your lifeline. It will track your kills, display your score, and show real-time rankings of all participants. It will also signal when you've been eliminated. Guard it as carefully as your own weapon." Michael inspected his. The moment it touched his skin, it bound to him with a faint surge of mana. The interface displayed his name. Michael Willson, points, 0, rank, not applicable. Sophia's gaze swept across the field one final time. "This trial will last for 3 days. Your only objective, survive and score as high as you can. Now begin." She raised both hands. The Colosseum floor erupted in light as a massive teleportation array spread beneath the candidates. Runes blazed across the stone, forming intricate circles. Michael exhaled slowly, his grip tightening around his sword hilt. "Here we go." In the blink of an eye, the light swallowed everything. Arrival at the island. The world reformed violently, like being thrust through a vortex. Michael landed on solid ground, his boots crunching against damp earth. He staggered slightly, then raised his head. The scene before him was breathtaking. The island stretched as far as his eyes could see, a vast wilderness teeming with danger. Towering snowy mountains loomed to the north, their peaks veiled in mist. To the east lay rolling green valleys, sunlight sparkling across rivers that cut through the land like silver veins. To the south sprawled a dense forest, dark and foreboding, where shadows moved even when the wind stood still. And to the west, grasslands and caves, the perfect breeding ground for packs of predators. A low growl echoed in the distance. Then another. The island was alive. Michael immediately recalled what he knew from the game. This island isn't just a test ground. It's a sealed dimension, bound by a high-level artifact called the Revival Zone. No one truly dies here. The moment your HP drops to 0, the artifact teleports you back to the Colosseum. His hand tightened around his blade. But that doesn't make it any less dangerous. Pain is real. Fear is real. And for many of them, failure here means the end of their future dreams. He glanced at his smartwatch. A glowing compass-like arrow rotated faintly. It would guide him toward monster spawns, but only generally, not precisely. A faint smirk touched his lips. "That's fine. I don't need it. I remember the spawn points, the hidden resources, the caches the devs slipped into this scenario. If I play my cards right, I'll secure points faster than anyone else." A rustle broke his thoughts. Michael froze, turning his head. From the shadows of the forest, pairs of glowing red eyes emerged. The stench of beast filled the air. He drew his blade in one smooth motion, the steel glinting faintly. "F-rank wolves," he muttered. 5 of them padded out from the tree-line, their bodies lean and muscular, saliva dripping from their fangs. Their growls reverberated, surrounding him. The corner of Michael's lips curved upward. Perfect warm-up. The wolves lunged. Across the island. Elsewhere, the other candidates had been scattered across the vast wilderness. Leon Lionheart stood at the edge of the snowy mountains, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He gazed into the blizzard winds, muttering, "This place, it'll forge me sharper than ever before." His crimson eyes glowed faintly, his Lionheart blood stirring with excitement. Aiden Stromfong cracked his knuckles as arcs of lightning sparked faintly around him. The vast grasslands stretched ahead, and he grinned. Now, wide open space. Perfect for me. Selena Valen, the princess of Denmard, moved silently through the forest, her shadow aura rippling faintly. She whispered softly, "A island with creepy environment. You. Alara Moonshade, the elven princess, stood beneath towering trees, bow in hand. Her sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, every sense alert. Edric William smirked arrogantly as he marched across the valley, his holy knight armor gleaming. This trial will prove my superiority. The rest are nothing but common trash." And far away, Aurelia Miller adjusted her gloves, her eyes narrowing. She muttered, "I'll prove my worth. No one will underestimate me." The island was alive with tension, and soon, blood would paint the ground. Back to Michael. The wolves pounced, claws slashing through the air. Michael's sword flashed once, sharp, precise. A clean arc of steel severed the throat of the first wolf before it even landed. Blood sprayed, its body collapsing lifelessly. The second wolf lunged from behind. Michael twisted smoothly, kicking off the ground, his blade sweeping in a perfect half-moon slash. The wolf's head tumbled to the earth. 3 remained. Their eyes flickered with both rage and hesitation. Michael exhaled, his body flowing with calm precision. Swordsmanship is about efficiency. No wasted movement, no hesitation. He stepped forward, mana surging faintly into his blade. Frost bloomed along its edge, the air chilling instantly. Frost Forge edge. The blade cut horizontally. A wave of icy mana burst forth, freezing the ground in a narrow arc. The wolves yelped as the ice crept up their legs, locking them in place. One by one, his sword flashed again. Clean, decisive strikes. The battle was over in seconds. Michael shook the blood from his blade and sheathed it. His smartwatch beeped. Plus 250 points. Current rank. First. A faint smile touched his lips. Good. This is only the beginning. He glanced deeper into the forest. The faint growls of larger beasts echoed. His expression hardened. 3 days. Let's see who truly deserves to rise. And with that, Michael vanished into the trees, the hunt only just beginning.